Chapter 1084. Since they were going to put on an act, they needed both parties involved for it to work. But the secretary's classmate had already left the country many years ago, and no one even knew where he was. So, what was the point of contacting him? So, the secretary's cousin ended up being the main actor. This was a response to Su-Yu's request. That night, the man that Han Shocha beat up was sent to the hospital. At this time, his wife took the opportunity to complain to the media. Does Su-Yu deserve to slander him just because he's Ching-Ai's cousin? We're just a small family. We're not people from the entertainment industry. Why doesn't Su-Yu think about the consequences of your words? My husband will be called a jerk. He's too afraid to go to work, and our son is too afraid to go to school. What do you want? Now, an even more serious consequence has arrived. My husband has been beaten up for no reason. Are you going to be satisfied if you force my husband to his death? The media quickly gathered around. Since Su-Yu's incident was about to be updated, they naturally moved quickly. More than a dozen reporters surrounded the woman in the hospital room for an interview. Since your husband is innocent, why didn't you refute him from the start? I thought the Han family would handle the matter, and we wouldn't have anything to say. But I never expected things to turn out this way. My husband is on the verge of losing his life, the woman said as she turned to the camera and began to cry. So what's the truth? Su-Yu has been framing me the entire time. Everyone knows that my husband may be a loafer, but he's always taken care of his family. Su-Yu is taking advantage of my husband's honesty to accuse him of something he doesn't have. She's certain that a small family like ours won't be able to clear things up with her. So, I beg you, Su-Yu, please let us go. I don't know who you cheated with, but my husband was definitely not one of them. The reason why she dared to say this was because 20 years ago, the news did not mention the identities of the two men and the photos were never taken. After all, the photos were taken by her secretary, and she was the one that hired them. So, she couldn't possibly push her own people into the abyss. So, the incident from back then was focused on Su-Yu cheating on two men. But the two men's identities weren't the main focus. It was Su-Yu's flirtatious behavior. It was also because Han Jie had confirmed this point that he dared to let the other party cry out in grievance. The reporters snapped furiously at the weeping beauty. After all, it was the person involved who came out to speak. Once the news got out, it would definitely be explosive. Then do you have any evidence to prove that your husband did not appear at the Han residence on the day of the incident? How am I supposed to prove it? Bullying a woman like me? How can I prove what happened 20 years ago? If Su-Yu wants someone to pay a price to stop framing her, can I beg you to stop torturing my husband? I can pay you back for him. After speaking, the woman excitedly rushed out of the circle of reporters and slammed her head into the wall. She immediately fainted, scaring everyone present. Was this what it meant by death? After a period of chaos, the woman was finally sent to the emergency room. Of course, her life was not in danger, but her body had to suffer a little. The person involved replied, "Please don't act. The person involved's wife makes an appearance for the first time. My husband definitely didn't hurt anyone." The person involved's wife criticizes Su-Yu. "You are a drama queen." From the looks of it, Han Jie has made his move again. He's even resorted to hitting the wall. Just as you expected, Tongning couldn't help but laugh as she watched the entertainment news. Mo Ting had already guessed that Han Jie would use the method of injuring himself to gain sympathy. From the looks of it, it seemed his prediction had been godly. Not only that, this woman is also going to use the child. After all, women and children are naturally the weaker group. After going around in circles and playing so many tricks, did they think they could cover up the truth? Tongning shook her head. The Han family probably thought that the incident happened 20 years ago and there was no way to reconstruct it. Plus, they were the ones that knew the truth the best, so they thought it was flawless, but as long as it's been done, it will definitely leave traces. Plus, this woman may appear to be in high spirits, but she's actually full of flaws. You've already done your own research, Mo Ting said as he lowered his head. He didn't need to look at Tongning's expression to know how confident his wife was about this incident. Han Jie wanted to turn this incident into a rash omen, but unfortunately, he had encountered a terrifying opponent. Behind this terrifying opponent, there was also a top-secret expert. So, even if he had to die to prove his sincerity, he still had to continue his act. As expected, after the woman woke up, she burst into tears, and her son also joined in. So, the media were extremely sympathetic towards the family. But Su Yu's response soon followed. Monsieur, firstly, you've admitted that your husband is a loafer. In other words, he's not a responsible man. But you also said that he cares about the family. Isn't this contradictory? How could a loafer care about the family? Secondly, from what I know, the neighbors have always thought that you and your husband have been fighting each other for a long time. In fact, they've assumed that you've been doing your own thing since you were young. May I ask, how can you be sure that your husband is 100% innocent? Is hitting the wall an innocent act? If that's the case, then if the suspect hits the wall, doesn't that mean he can clear his name? Thirdly, if you immediately told me what your husband likes and dislikes in front of the media, I might have believed you. But even a married couple doesn't stick together all the time. So, how can you guarantee your words? Aren't you trying to force me to retreat by using your death as a way to prove your sincerity? Look, someone's about to die. Why don't you just give up? I'm sure you can't tell me what's special about your husband, right? But I can tell you. Even if I have to reopen the scars, I can tell you that the jerk has a green birthmark on the left side of his butt. So it's useless. You've hit the wall for nothing because you can't clear your husband's name. Su Yu's counterattack was clear and focused. Because, even though the woman was crying, she was full of holes. Originally, the media thought they could control the momentum. But, after Su Yu's response, they almost lost themselves to sympathy. Chapter 1085. As a result, the situation became clearer. Anyone with eyes could tell that if there was nothing wrong with the couple, why would they stand on the side of the weak and influence the public opinion? The funniest thing was, Han Jie thought the woman would be able to turn the tables and regain some of his dignity. But he never expected. Su Yu easily overshadowed him with a few words. In other words, the woman had done it for nothing. Meanwhile, the onlookers began to believe Su Yu's words more and more. After all, she could even remember the characteristics of the jerk. Afterwards, the reporters tried to test the wife, who was willing to die to prove her husband's innocence. But, just like Tongning said, she was completely clueless about her husband. Plus, the neighbor on the street told the reporters that the couple had indeed been on bad terms many years ago. So, as soon as the lie was revealed, it was immediately slapped across the face and exposed. Seeing this, Han Jie had no other choice. From the beginning, Su Yu and Tongning had been suppressing him. It wasn't easy for him to hold on until now. So, he decided to give up at this time. Father Han finally returned to China after realizing the severity of the situation. As soon as he saw his son, he spat out one word, trash. Han Jie was completely exhausted. As long as Father Han was willing to step forward and take over, he would accept the fact that he was trash. Where's Xiucha? How come I don't see him? I'm not sure either. Xiucha has been acting mysteriously lately, Han Jie replied. Father Han's body was bloated, and he had lost the elegance he once had. Instead, he looked like a blessed man. Meanwhile, his wife was still young and beautiful. Find Xiucha and tell him not to go out and cause any more trouble. Also, I will be holding a press conference tomorrow. When the time comes, you must appear and testify against that crazy woman. If there's one person who can settle this matter, it's you. After all, having his own son testify against him was irrefutable evidence. Not long after, Han Xiucha returned home. As soon as he saw his father and stepmother, his attitude was indifferent. Because he had always been like this, no one suspected him, and they simply discussed Tongning. What a slut. She can't even handle her own family matters, yet she's sticking her nose into other people's business. That bitch Su Yu is too much. It's already been 20 years, yet she's still trying to bring up the past. How shameless. After hearing Father Han's words, Han Xiucha suddenly leaned forward with a thoughtful expression on his face. Xiucha, this is all your fault. If you hadn't provoked that crazy woman, none of this would have happened and your entire family wouldn't have been implicated. Dad, I only have one question for you. Back then, Did that woman really have an affair? Father Han looked at Han Xiucha and replied in a matter-of-fact manner. Of course, how could it be fake? It's all over the newspaper. You saw it too. Then who were the two men she had an affair with? Hearing this question, Papa Han was stunned for a moment. How would I remember the man she found outside? As soon as he heard this, Han Xiucha was completely awake. He originally held onto a sliver of hope that his stepmother's cousin might be lying to him. However, which man wouldn't know the identities of two men after knowing that his wife had cheated on him? Wasn't the hatred of someone stealing their wife on the same level as the hatred of someone killing their father? All in all, you need to be on the same page as your brother. I want that crazy woman to be destroyed once again. His tone was not small at all. Han Xiucha wanted to sneer. That's enough. Don't think too much about it. Just follow me to the press conference. Let's eat first. Was he still in the mood to eat? He couldn't eat. With this thought, Han Xiucha stood up from the sofa and returned to his room. He then picked up the keys to his motorcycle. I'm going out to buy something. You guys eat first. Do whatever you want. Father Han said impatiently. It turned out he had been living under a lie for so many years. Yet, those people continued to lie to him and use him. How could there be such a good thing in the world? A press conference? He might as well hold a press conference. After all, he had already bullied Tongning so many times and hated Su Yu for so many years. So, he could finally repay his debt. Meanwhile, Tongning received news that Father Han had returned to China. Finally, the main character appeared. As a jerk that was comparable to Han Yufan, Father Han didn't disappoint. The next day, he couldn't wait to hold a press conference. From the looks of it, he wanted to suppress everything. If this was someone else's game, it wouldn't be a big deal. But this was Tongning's game. No matter what, he still had to follow her rules. The main character has finally appeared. In this incident, Father Han and his mistress are the two people that should be nailed to the wall of shame. You need to watch out for that secretary. Since she was already so evil 20 years ago, 20 years later, her methods are only going to get better and better, Mo Ting reminded Tongning. Seeing that she was tired from carrying Yen Air, Father Han quickly took his daughter into his arms and coaxed her to sleep before placing her in her crib. With so many lies piled up, he can forget about suppressing everything. If a Mir Han family wants to suppress everything, then he's underestimating you, Tongning scoffed. As long as they dare to hold a press conference, Annie Su will definitely prepare an even more spectacular counterattack. Let's see how shameless Father Han is. I've decided to hold a press conference today. I've decided to release the Ant Queen at the end of the year so that it can compete for the Fei Tian Awards. Mo Ting suddenly changed the topic and mentioned the film. Are you talking about Best Actor, Best Director, and Best Producer? Mo Ting replied. It seemed he was always thinking about Tongning and was always thinking about her. Apart from helping you win an award, I'm not interested in anything else. I'll listen to you. I don't care if I don't get the Best Producer award, but I hope Xiao's son gets one. That would be the best way to comfort him. Trust me, when the film is released, it will definitely surprise everyone. I didn't know you had so much faith in me, Tongning said as she leaned into Mo Ting's embrace. Tongning leaned into Mo Ting's embrace. She loved this man to the bone. After the Han family matter is over, I will definitely accompany you. President Mo, you've worked hard. When the time comes, our family of 5 will go to a beautiful beach. I'm going to dress my 2 sons up like little princes. I'm looking forward to seeing you in a bikini, Mo Ting whispered seductively beside Tongning's ear. Chapter 1086. If one were to ask who Su Yu hated the most, it wouldn't necessarily be the mistress. She stole someone else's husband and destroyed someone else's family. But the thing that made Su Yu feel the most despair was when Han Jie called the mistress mother. After all, she had carried Han Jie for 10 months before giving birth to him. She had poured all her love into raising him. But unfortunately, at a critical moment, a small child like him knew how to avoid harm. No, it should be said that Han Jie already knew about his father and secretary, but he didn't tell his biological mother. Perhaps the secretary had spent a lot of effort on her son. The Han family will be holding a press conference tomorrow. In fact, the entire family will be attending. Hearing Tongning's words, Suyu was shocked. The shameless couple is back? Tongning nodded her head and looked deeply into Suyu's eyes. They're back. In fact, as soon as they returned, they called the reporters to suppress the matter. Suppress? Suyu sneered and lowered her head to look at her legs. It's so strange. I've held on to such a huge injustice for the past 20 years, yet now, I suddenly hate that family to the core. It turns out that hatred doesn't diminish with time, nor does it disappear. I understand you, Annie Sue. Only by returning the pain you've suffered 100-fold, 1,000-fold, can the hatred in your heart be truly appeased. Being a woman in this world is already tough enough. If you continue to be a coward, you might as well die. I once relied on relationships for my entire life. But after I woke up, I realized that women could do anything that men could do. So, no matter what, if I could do it myself, I would do it myself. After being reborn, I told myself to be a little more selfish. That's why I ended up like this. An eye for an eye. Our only luck is that you met Mo Ting and I met Old Long. So you stood up from the sofa and wrapped her shawl tightly around her body. She then patted Tongning on the shoulder and dragged her feet over to the window and looked out into the distance. Tomorrow, right? If that's the case, I really need to open my ears and eyes wide. I'm curious to see how that shameless couple is going to turn the truth upside down. By the way, there's also my good son, Han Jie. Compared to Han Xiuqi's endless pestering, Han Jie was obviously worse. However, he hid it better than Han Xiuqi. On the other hand, Han Xiuqi didn't hide his actions at all. As expected, a person's bottom line was determined through comparison. Thinking about it this way, Han Xiuqi was indeed gentle to the Han family. Tomorrow, I will arrange for my assistant to have the reporters on standby. As soon as the Han family tries to pressure us, we will retaliate. There's no one who doesn't pay the price for doing something wrong. It's just a matter of time. You won't be able to escape punishment. Sue-yi, don't be afraid. 20 years of hiding is enough. Besides, I have you and Old Long by my side. One is an international martial arts superstar, and the other is a 2-time Fei Tian Best Actress. What do I have to be afraid of? One of you is a scholar, and the other is a fighter. So you burst into laughter. Plus, even though I'm a senior, I still feel a sense of fear whenever I see President Mo. He was born to look like an emperor commanding an army. Plus, to be able to turn Hai Rui into the leader of the entertainment industry in such a short period of time, a man in his early 30s must be very capable. Therefore, with him around, I believe that he will be your best protector. You've all overestimated him. Tongning couldn't help but laugh. No matter how colorful the world was and how flashy the industry was, in the end, love still existed between people. The amount of love that Suyu once had for Father Han was the same amount of hatred that Tongning now had for him. On top of that, there were also 20 years of grievances that Suyu had suffered. This was enough to destroy an entire family. So, everything depended on tomorrow. Mo Ting had already confirmed the release date of the Ant Queen. It would be on December 16th. However, Tongning had no intention of letting Mo Ting announce it to the public. She wanted to wait until the Han family's matter was settled. Although Han Xiuqi had no time to provoke Tongning anymore because of Suyu, Tongning wanted to leave all the attention to Suyu and help her achieve her wish. The next day, the media was once again in an uproar. This time, the Han family turned out in full force to respond to Suyu's incident. The entire family, including their secretary, appeared. Because of their father's appearance, Han Jie and Han Xiuqi appeared a lot more obedient. They were both dressed in black suits and stood silently behind their father. Meanwhile, Father Han appeared extremely arrogant. Even though so many years had passed, his aura was still there. After all, when he was young, he had carved out a bloody path in the entertainment industry. Although his power was later taken away by his eldest son, he still managed to expand his career overseas. In other words, he was more successful overseas than he was in China. But China was still his home base. After being overseas for so many years, he had always wanted to return. So he had to deal with Su Yu's incident properly and suppress the news as soon as possible. 20 years had passed, yet Su Yu still wanted to make a comeback. If she wanted to keep dreaming, he could fulfill her wish. As for his secretary, even after so many years, she was still young and beautiful. It seemed she understood men well and knew what methods to use to keep them. So, after 20 years, she had not changed much. The family of four appeared in front of the media. They were all dressed in suits and leather shoes, looking very formal. The reporters present could feel the seriousness of the atmosphere. This was because Father Han wanted to create a tense atmosphere, which would give people a sense of solemnity that they wouldn't dare to violate. Afterwards, Father Han sat down on the stage and said to the media, "Firstly, I would like to thank everyone for their support and attention towards the Han family. I would also like to thank all the friends that have helped us with this incident. I will always remember you. Secondly, let's get back to the topic at hand. 20 years has passed. If I were to think back to that day, it would be extremely painful. After all, not a single man would be willing to admit in front of the public that he was cheated on, especially by two men at once. I don't want to think about that dirty scene anymore. Yet, someone doesn't cherish the tolerance I've shown her and continues to bring up the scandal from 20 years ago and embarrass everyone. Su Yu, you've made up so many stories to prove that this person is lying and that person is cheating. What's the point? It doesn't change the fact that you cheated." Chapter 1087. As soon as Father Han said this, the media couldn't help but ask, "President Han, when you said this, did you ever consider that evidence of you cheating with your secretary would be exposed? Those are all forgeries, fakes. Everyone knows that I, Han Zhong, am a man of the Gu family. I never thought that after 20 years, that woman would still be able to fabricate evidence to slander me. If I didn't do it, then I didn't do it. I'm a righteous person. My secretary and I only officially got together after my divorce. This is something that my two sons can prove." Father Han's attitude was firm, and he exuded a strong aura that made it impossible for the reporters to ask any more questions. All they could do was roll their eyes and tell them that the Han family weren't here to give an explanation. Instead, they were here to force them to believe that they didn't do anything wrong and that anyone that schemed against them was trash. What happened next was even easier to guess. The two sons would simply step forward and testify against their biological mother. Then, the entire matter would come to an end. Wasn't this the PR method of the entertainment industry 20 years ago? It was outdated now. Did they think they were having a meeting with the company leaders? The evidence that Su Yu found can't prove anything. But you will definitely believe my son's words. After all, my son was also given birth to by that woman. There's no reason for my son to slander his mother, right? Father Han followed the reporter's plan and placed his gaze on Han Jie. Han Jie, you speak. After speaking, Father Han gestured for Han Jie to step onto the stage. In reality, Han Jie was quite impressed by Father Han's forceful methods, forcefully claiming that he didn't do anything wrong and everything was because of the other party's shameless methods. He was showing off his shamelessness. But what if he actually used such an unsophisticated method to suppress the matter? The incident has already happened 20 years ago. I'm sure it would be a second round of pain for anyone to settle old scores. I really don't want to sit here. After all, I'm facing the mother that gave birth to me and raised me. But there must be a limit to everything. I can't allow her to hurt an innocent person just because she's my mother. That's all I have to say. Thank you everyone for your attention. After all, Han Jie had already been slapped in the face, so his answers were very perfunctory and didn't really focus on anything important. Father Han turned to look at his son. He hoped that Han Jie would tell him the details of the incident, but what happened in the end? Yet, Han Jie had brushed this matter off with a light brush. Father Han still wanted Han Jie to go up, but Han Jie pretended not to see it. Han Xiuqia lowered his head. It was unclear what he was thinking. Since he wasn't present at the time, Father Han didn't need him to make a statement. Instead, he turned his attention to his wife. The secretary instantly understood what her husband meant. She pretended to be aggrieved and sobbed. She walked to the front of the stage and bowed to everyone in apology. I'm very sorry. My family's affairs have tainted everyone's eyes. This incident should have been resolved 20 years ago. I never expected it to resurface 20 years later. I don't know what the person behind this is trying to do. Sujia, I don't know what you want. If you think I stole your husband and you want to get revenge on me, fine, I'll admit to it. In that case, you can ask for any compensation you want. But why did you bring this matter up again and make it so everyone knows about it? You're making it so hard for the two kids to live with their heads held high. I know I shouldn't have married my husband, but I couldn't bear to see him suffer like that. Apart from comforting him and marrying him, there was nothing else I could do. If you want to hate someone, then direct it at me. I really don't want you to continue being so stubborn. These people were simply taking turns to attack Su Yu, but they didn't have any actual evidence to prove their innocence. So, it was obvious that there was a problem. The reporters wanted to expose Su Yu and find evidence. They didn't want them to cry and say that Su Yu shouldn't have complained about her innocence. Shocha, do you have anything to say? The secretary asked as she handed the baton to Han Shocha. After a few seconds of surprise, Han Shocha nodded his head. Of course. Afterwards, Han Shocha walked over to the podium. The reporters were so bored that they almost fell asleep. Why was it that everyone in the entertainment industry, but Tongning's news was always full of ups and downs? Why was this family acting like they were at a company conference? Plus, after Han Shocha spoke, everything would come to an end, right? Father Han would definitely announce that from now on, he would no longer respond to this matter. Afterwards, this matter would forever sink into the depths of the ocean. Before I talk about this matter, I need to clarify that I wasn't there at the time, so I don't know what the truth is. So, did Han Shocha intend to completely extricate himself from this matter? So, many years ago, when I heard that my father caught my mother in bed with two men, I hated her. I hated her for making me so embarrassed in front of others. I also hated her for destroying our harmonious family. So, I continue to hate her for 20 years. Today, 20 years later, as I sit here, I suddenly have a question that I want to ask my father. Father Han was annoyed. He looked at Han Shocha as if to say, "What's wrong with you? Why are you being so nosy?" But he still said to Han Shocha, "Ask away." I want to ask, aren't you tired of lying to yourself like this? As soon as these words left his mouth, everyone was shocked, especially Father Han. What does Han Shocha mean by this? Shocha, I'm sorry that you held a press conference to suppress the matter, but I did it because I wanted to find out the truth. Han Shocha replied. Without looking at his father's expression, he turned around and said to the reporters, "Since we've already invited so many reporters, why don't we make a big scene? I've already called Ms. Su to come over. Since the two of you have so much suspicion and hatred towards each other, why don't you sit down and discuss it?" After hearing Han Shocha's words, the originally sleepy reporters suddenly woke up. Was Han Shocha's Easter egg? As a result, the scene suddenly became lively. At this time, Han Jie poked Han Shocha in the waist. "What are you trying to do?" The matter was about to end. "End? We've only just begun," Han Shocha laughed. Chapter 1088. What are you trying to do? At this time, Han Jie suddenly realized that Han Shocha's expression wasn't quite right. "What are you so afraid of? Since that woman is lying, isn't it better to clarify the truth in front of everyone?" Han Shocha asked. "Besides, what's the point of yelling at each other? Why don't you let me help you?" "You're crazy. You're definitely crazy." Han Jie was on the verge of exploding in anger. Meanwhile, Father Han's hands trembled in anger. Originally, the matter was about to be resolved, but because of Han Shocha's interference, the media's appetite was once again whetted. But they were currently at a press conference, so they couldn't just leave like that. So, they could only endure their anger and ask Han Shocha to invite Su Yu to the venue. In reality, Su Yu and Tongning never expected that Han Shocha would send someone to pick them up. After all, they were just here to watch a show. So, they might as well go and see the other party's true colors. So, Su Yu immediately agreed. Of course, this was a matter for the Han family, so Tongning couldn't possibly accompany them. So, She simply told Suyu to bring her bodyguards and legal team with her to defend against the disgusting family. As for what Han Shoucha was up to, they would have to wait until they arrived at the venue to find out. So, the media were all waiting for Suyu to appear. After all, Han Shoucha had told them that she was about to arrive. "What's Shoucha doing?" Father Han's secretary asked in private. "Is he going to let that woman come so that everyone can watch a bigger joke? How would I know what he's up to?" Father Han replied coldly, causing his secretary to swallow back her words. The secretary pursed her lips helplessly and did not say another word. She was going to let these people cause a ruckus. All she needed to do was sit back and watch the show. Father Han and Han Jie glared at Han Shoucha, but Han Shoucha simply sat on the stage without saying a word. His expression was firm. No one knew what he had up his sleeves, and it was precisely because of this that everyone felt a lingering fear. But the Han family refused to believe that Han Shoucha would betray them. After all, Han Jie believed that he was the one that raised Han Shoucha, unless Han Shoucha was an ungrateful person. He seemed to have forgotten that he himself was an ungrateful person. After waiting for about 10 minutes, a black figure finally appeared in the lobby of the hotel. She limped over to the podium with a group of people. As soon as Suyu appeared, the reporters immediately turned around and started snapping photos of her. But the Han family scoffed at her appearance. How could a cripple like her put on a show? Was he planning to lose all his face? However, when enemies met, their eyes turned red. Suyu scanned her eyes across the 4 people on stage and sneered. "I haven't seen you in 20 years. I never thought you would say such disgusting things on television. You're exactly the same as the person I remember. You cheated on your own, yet you still came out to sow discord, causing our whole family to come out to clean up the aftermath for you. What a shame." Father Han replied. "Look, isn't it a lot more interesting now?" Han Shoucha laughed when he saw the two arguing as soon as they met. "What do you think? Now that everyone is here, I feel that I also have a lot of questions. Let me ask my big brother first." Han Jie looked at Han Shoucha and furrowed his brows. He couldn't understand what Han Shoucha wanted. But Han Shoucha directly asked, "Did you personally witness Ms. Su having an affair?" "Shoucha, you simply need to answer me." "Of course, I saw everything clearly," Han Jie replied confidently. "No matter how many times you ask me, I will always give you the same answer." "Okay." Han Shoucha stopped talking and turned to ask Father Han. "Father, did you say that when you returned home, you saw Ms. Su sleeping with 2 men?" How could I be lying?" "Lastly, Secretary Li, did you say that you only started dating my father after he got divorced?" "Yes." The secretary nodded, even though she didn't understand why Han Shoucha was asking this. "Great," Han Shoucha said to his family before he turned to ask Suyu, "What about you?" Suyu took a deep breath and said in a firm voice, "Those 3 jerks are all lying. But you can't prove your innocence." Han Shoucha said, "Even if you prove that they're lying, you still can't prove it, Ms. Su. Of course, she can't prove it. After all, it's true that she cheated." Father Han said sternly, "Playing a threesome with 2 men in bed. Isn't it clear enough in the newspaper?" "It wasn't clear enough," Han Shoucha replied. Han Shoucha replied, "I previously asked you about the identities of the 2 men, but you said you didn't know. Coincidentally, the newspapers didn't have any information about them either. All we knew was that they were male. But that's where the problem lies. A man found out that his wife had cheated on him, and it wasn't a public event. Yet, the first thing he did was take a photo and expose it to the public. Don't normal men hide it because they're afraid that they'll be laughed at? It's fine to expose it because it's understandable that he's angry. But why did he only expose his wife and not the adulterers? You're quite kind to your adulterers. Your actions don't fit the image of someone who found out that their wife cheated on them. In fact, you look more like a jerk that deliberately framed his wife so that he could get out of a divorce." After hearing Han Shoucha's words, the reporters gasped in surprise, because this analysis was really, really awesome. As for why you didn't expose the identities of the 2 adulterers, firstly, you knew them, and secondly, you were the one that hired them. So, you had to ensure that their identities weren't exposed. Which one do you think you are? Papa Han's face suddenly turned ashen. As for my brother's answer, it's related to a very important matter. Was Secretary Li Qing'ai present at the time of the incident? I've summarized what my father and brother said, but I didn't mention Li Qing'ai. But Ms. Su clearly mentioned that Li Qing'ai called her to get some information from my father. That's why Ms. Su opened the door for her. Afterwards, she ordered the two men to humiliate Ms. Su and even took a photo for evidence. In other words, Secretary Li was present at the time. Chapter 1089. In that case, I've also figured out the problem. It's related to the angle of the photo. Everyone can go back and take a look at the newspaper from 20 years ago. Do you think an angry husband would choose the right angle to take a photo and avoid the man's face? 20 years ago, phones didn't even have a camera function. So, how did the photo get taken? The camera, how long would it take to find the camera and obtain evidence? After Ms. Su discovered that her husband was back, would she still be able to continue to have fun with the man? If you think about it this way, how could my father possibly take a photo of Ms. Su with a man? They must have been separated a long time ago. Plus, based on the clarity of the photo, we can deduce the angle of the person who took the photo. It's so close. Isn't it obvious that someone deliberately took the photo? After hearing this, Secretary Li's face turned red guiltily. In other words, Ms. Su's statement is the closest to the truth. Not only was Secretary Li present at the time, but he even took a photo. After hearing Han Xiuqi's analysis, the media suddenly wanted to kneel to him. Why did he suddenly wake up like Detective Conan? Or was Han Xiuqi possessed by a ghost? Why was he standing on Su Yu's side? This was unbelievable. But no matter what, his analysis was completely in line with common sense. And it was also convincing from the bottom of people's hearts. Han Xiuqi, do you know what you're saying? Father Han stood up and roared at Han Xiuqi. He wanted to stop Han Xiuqi. If he continued, the consequences would be unimaginable. Father, we can talk about your matter later. I still need to deal with my brother, Han Xiuqi replied with a smile. Han Xiuqi smiled. He then turned his attention to Han Jie and said, my brother said that he witnessed the entire process. In that case, I'm sure you know who the two men that cheated on Ms. Su are, right? Han Jie froze. After a moment of silence, he replied, I was so young back then. How would I know them? Can't you remember anything? No. In that case, when did you first see Ms. Su cheating on you with two men? At first? Halfway. Xiuqi, what exactly do you want to know? Han Jie asked anxiously. He was afraid that if he said one wrong word, Han Xiuqi would be able to use it against him. Plus, don't forget who raised you. How dare you speak to me like this? Just tell me if Secretary Li was there at that time. Nope. Han Jie answered with certainty. Then who took the photo? Of course it's Dad. Think carefully before you answer me. Han Xiuqi, are you interrogating a criminal? Han Jie asked angrily. The situation is already clear. Su Yu has been the one causing trouble the entire time. Instead of helping your family, you're helping an outsider. After hearing Han Jie's words, Han Xiuqi suddenly laughed. Didn't you help outsiders for 20 years? What do you mean? Could it be that these two brothers were going to start a fight? How could this be? In the past, Han Xiuqi had always hated Su Yu and Tongning. So, why did he suddenly change his attitude? Moreover, he was indeed raised by Han Jie. Even if Han Xiuqi was a jerk, he wouldn't destroy his brother, right? You know very well what I mean. 20 years ago, what did you see and what did you do? After hearing this, Han Jie looked at Han Xiuqi with a complicated expression. He couldn't believe that this was coming from his brother's mouth. So his eyes were filled with shock and disbelief. Han Xiuqi, no matter what I did, I have a clear conscience. That's enough. Stop pretending to be a private detective and trying to judge a case. There's nothing more to say. The truth is already in front of us. Let's end the press conference here. Father Han took the opportunity to clean up the mess. He simply wanted to end this farce as soon as possible. Especially after Han Xiuqi's analysis, he was afraid that the truth would be exposed. This was simply a sign of a guilty conscience. But Han Xiuqi turned around and looked at his father and brother. What if I can show you evidence? As soon as the reporters heard the word evidence, their eyes lit up in shock. Is this considered an internal strife? What's wrong with Han Shiocha? I can't believe it. No one can show me any evidence. To be honest, I don't believe that he has any. In an instant, the hall was in an uproar because of Han Shiocha's words. If they had evidence from the start, the matter wouldn't have ended up in a stalemate. Han Shiocha, if you've caused enough trouble, then get out of here. Father Han's words were clearly starting to show a hint of anger. Reporters, disperse. I caused trouble? No, I didn't. Ever since I could remember, my mother has been called a slut because a photo of her cheating was published in the newspapers. You and my brother continuously created a negative image of her in front of me. That's why I've hated her for 20 years. I've never doubted the truth of the matter and believed everything you said. But I never imagined that the two of you would lie to me as well. Who's been gossiping in your ears? Could it be that woman? How could you believe her words? Han Shiocha turned around and looked at Han Jie. He then said in a powerful voice, If I don't believe her, why should I believe you? After all, ever since this matter was revealed, your actions have been too abnormal. You once said that woman was shameless, but now you're just as shameless as her. You're constantly trying to cover up your lies. Han Shiocha, I was there the night you went to look for Li Qingai's cousin. Han Shiocha interrupted. You went in for 3 hours and taught her cousin how to complain and his wife how to hit the wall. Do you still need me to help you remember all of this? Han Jie's expression abruptly changed. You repeatedly called your father in your room and tried to come up with a lot of ways to suppress the matter. Do you need me to help you remember? Shiocha, it's not like that. You've misunderstood. Compared to Ms. Su's hurt, your lies hurt me more, so you must have tried to drive a wedge between us. That's enough. Han Shiocha completely lost control. Do you really think that I don't have any evidence? Shiocha, think carefully. I'm your biological brother. The woman on the other side is also your mother. Didn't you still sell her out? Han Shiocha laughed in ridicule. Fine. Since you say you have evidence, where is it? Han Jie suddenly changed his attitude towards Han Shiocha. Chapter 1090. As she watched the two brothers argue, Su Yu's last bit of patience ran out. So, she said, that's enough. How much longer do you want to put on an act in front of me? I know your ultimate motive is to help your father and the media erase the memory from 20 years ago. Since that's the case, then why are you acting like a good cop and a bad cop in front of me? You're making me look down on you. Han Shiocha, I don't know why you brought me here. Did you want me to see how united your family of four are? Or did you simply want to provoke me? If that's the case, I'm already here and you've achieved your motive. Can we put an end to this farce? Han Shiocha looked at the woman below the stage and fell silent. Su Yu couldn't tell. No, to be exact, she couldn't believe that he would help her. But of course, she had been hurt for 20 years and was still being hurt just 2 days ago. Why would she believe him? With this thought, Han Shiocha looked at Han Jie, the angry Father Han, and the secretary, and nodded his head. Afterwards, he walked off the stage and gestured for the hotel management to turn on the projector. He then played the video of his conversation with Secretary Li's cousin on the big screen. My cousin contacted me to look for Su Yu. She first told me that she was pregnant, but that Han Shiocha refused to divorce her. So, she asked me to help her scare Su Yu. I never expected this to happen. At the time, I was blinded by greed, but I honestly didn't insult your mother. She was my cousin's classmate. When the first sentence came out of this scumbag's mouth and was transmitted to everyone's ears through the big screen, everyone was shocked. In reality, this was the second time that Han Shiocha had threatened the man that night. The video was also recorded at that time. As he watched this, Father Han suddenly looked at Han Jie and wanted to ask him what was going on. How did Han Shiocha get his hands on the video? Han Jie shook his head, indicating that he had no idea. At this moment, Father Han stood up. He was very courageous. He picked up a chair and smashed it on the hotel's projection screen. A loud bang was heard. Everyone was shocked by Father Han's actions. That's all for today's press conference. You can all leave now. I'll leave the rest to the lawyers. Father Han looked at Han Shiocha. It seemed every word he said was with all his might. But, Han Shiocha, did not give up. If you're not here today to settle this matter, I'll send the video on my phone out and give everyone a copy. After hearing Han Xiuqi's words, Father Han clenched his fists and wanted to say something. But, of course of action, secretarially interrupted, Xiuqi, can you not anger your father? After so many years, haven't you made any progress at all? You are the least of your place. Han Xiuqi pointed at Li Qing'ai and scolded, you're just a mistress. Who gave you the right to interfere in my business? He deserves to die from anger, Han Xiuqi said coldly. Did Tongning give you something? Or did that woman give you something? Are you going to turn the tables on the people that gave birth to you and raised you? Han Jie took the opportunity to fire at Han Xiuqi. Speak. None of them gave me any benefits, but the ones who really hurt me were you. You. Why don't you let me continue playing the video? What are you feeling guilty about? Are you afraid that others will know that you two worked together to harm your wife and mother? What are you afraid of? If you could do it, then don't be afraid. The most disgusting thing is Li Qing'ai. Today, you can end the press conference without a conclusion. But when the video is released, you will still have to lower your heads. You better think carefully. After speaking, Han Xiuqi walked over to Su Yu and looked in her eyes. I know you won't forgive me no matter what I say or do, but I want an outcome today. Su Yu looked at Han Xiuqi and took a deep breath. Even though she still didn't trust him, she no longer rejected his actions. The two were now on the same side. Now, it was up to the Han family to decide. What are you going to do? Father, Han Jie turned and looked at Father Han. Father Han did not say a word. After quite some time, he finally rushed off the stage and threw a punch at Han Xiuqi's chin. From today onwards, I, Han Zhong, will pretend that I never had a son like you. The reporters gasped in surprise. They thought the father and son were about to start fighting. But Han Xiuqi simply rubbed his chin and stood up. Facing his overbearing father, he was neither servile nor overbearing. Don't misunderstand. Even this couldn't offset the evil that he had done in the past. But he still had a little bit of humanity left. He had no choice. With such a video, what else could Father Han do? Was he going to go out and say that it was fake? If that was really the case, he would be lying to himself and humiliating himself. Since things had gotten to this point, I have nothing else to say. After speaking, Father Han turned around and left the hotel. He was telling Han Xiuqi to do whatever he wanted. If he wanted to expose the video, then go ahead. After all, he wasn't going to sit there and let others humiliate him. As Father Han left, Han Jie and Li Qing'ai looked at each other and followed suit. Afterwards, the media surrounded Han Xiuqi and demanded to see the video in his hands. To prevent any more trouble, Han Xiuqi sent the video to the media. After all, even if Father Han didn't want to admit his mistake today, he would in the future. So you looked at Han Xiuqi. Perhaps this was the only meaningful thing he had done up to this point. So, she did not say much to him and simply left. But, as soon as she returned home, she received a phone call from Tongning. Auntie Sue, I've already seen the news. But, don't let your guard down. My intuition tells me that this video can't be used as evidence. Plus, Han Xiuqi might even be suspected to be a fake. Look at the man. He was obviously forced to say what he said. Tongning immediately received first-hand information. At the press conference, the entire Han family was in an uproar. It was a perfect example of a battle between rich families. No matter what, he was trying to do a good deed, right? Su Yu asked. Let's wait and see how the public reacts. The full version of the video was released half an hour later. It was uploaded to the internet in a very complete manner. Although it could be determined to be fake, from the content of the video, it was clear what kind of old and disgusting thing had happened in the Han family 20 years ago. Chapter 1091. Not long after, the video went viral. I've been watching this show for a long time, and I already knew the outcome. But after seeing this piece of trash admit to it, I can imagine the pain Su Yu went through 20 years ago. I couldn't even handle it. She was betrayed by her husband and had her legs broken by him. Yet, as a son, Su Yu only exposed her after 20 years. She's quite merciful. The Han family asked me to review a phrase called hypocrisy. Look at Han Jie. How sanctimonious does he look on the surface? But he's actually a wolf in human skin. He already knew to betray his mother at such a young age. The most despicable person is the mistress. After stealing someone's husband, she tried to force them to abdicate. Not only did she force them to abdicate, she even tried to find a man to humiliate them. Fuck, even mistresses would despise a woman like this. It was obvious that the comments online were all biased towards Suyu. After all, the content of the video was already clear enough. Even though Father Han did contact his lawyer and the lawyer confirmed that the video was invalid, but many people already had an answer in their hearts. Even though Suyu ended up losing in court because there was no evidence, everyone was already convinced that Suyu was the victim. This fact was already set in stone. The Han family were indeed nervous. After all, because of the Han family, Han Jie's artists no longer received any opportunities. Even Han Xiuqi's comics have been asked to cancel their contract, and their stocks lost tens of millions in a single day. Meanwhile, Han Jie's father was in an even worse state. He originally thought that his overseas career wouldn't be affected because he was thousands of miles away from Tongning. But his father's situation ended up being published on an overseas website by Tongning. As a result, his overseas career took a huge hit. As a result, Father Han had no choice but to lock himself at home and smoke. Meanwhile, Han Jie and Li Qing'ai were extremely worried. You've already treated Han Xiuqi well over the years. Who would have thought you were still betrayed by him? Han Jie laughed and shook his head. I, Han Jie, will pretend that I never had a brother. If I told you that I want to find someone to hurt him, what would you do? Li Qing'ai asked Han Jie in a probing manner. After all, it's all thanks to him that our family has suddenly become like this. Shouldn't he pay the price for what he has done? Li Qing'ai swirled the red wine glass in her hand and said to Han Jie, otherwise, I won't be able to take this lying down. Suit yourself. Han Jie never expected that her words would almost cost his brother his life. Plus, he never imagined that Li Qing'ai would actually dare to let someone else do it. Afterwards, she used Father Han's phone to send Han Xiuqi a message and arranged to meet on the top floor of Han Jie's apartment. But when Han Xiuqi reached the top floor, he was surrounded and beaten up by a few people. Han Xiuqi never imagined that Father Han would meet with him just to beat him up. At this moment, midnight, Tongning was woken up by a phone call from Long Jie. At the same time, she heard a shocking piece of news. Han Xiuqi fell from a building. After he fell, he sent you a video. What? There was too much information for Tongning to process. So, she stood up and went to the study room to look at the news online. The video that Long Jie sent her was of Han Xiuqi kneeling on the ground covered in blood. It appeared he had recorded it himself, and he even said a few words in a muffled voice. Tongning had to turn the volume up to hear it clearly. Tongning, I'm now returning the apology I owe you. Mom, I actually wanted to apologize to you, but I'm afraid I won't have the chance. Afterwards, Han Xiuqi collapsed on the ground. After watching the video, Tongning immediately returned Long Jie's phone call. What happened? Apparently, the Han family sent someone to teach Han Xiuqi a lesson. In the end, they got into a fight on the rooftop, and Han Xiuqi ended up falling off the building. But after he fell off the building, he immediately uploaded this video. He couldn't even make an emergency call. How could the Han family be so ruthless? Tongning couldn't believe it. Hurting someone's life, especially someone close to them. No, the Han family had already done it once before. So, it wasn't surprising. But everything happened too suddenly. Has Annie Sue found out? Apparently, she's already been sent to the hospital. It seems Han Xiuqi still has a chance to live. Although he's annoying to apologize to you in this way, it would still make people feel uncomfortable if they saw it. Annie Sue has Uncle Long with her, don't worry. Okay, I just wanted to let you know. After the phone call, Tongning quietly returned to her room. Mo Ting had already woken up and was looking at the news. Did you find out? Tongning walked over to the bed and sat down against Mo Ting's body. Now that I think about it, do you think everything that happened wasn't worth it? Although I really hate Han Xiuqi and even hate him, Seeing him kneel on the ground and apologize to me in this way still makes me feel bad. I'll release a statement for you tomorrow. Okay. Tongning nodded her head and opened her eyes until the next morning. The next morning, news arrived from the media that Han Xiucha had been declared brain dead from his serious injuries. Meanwhile, not a single member of the Han family showed up at the hospital. Only Su Yu and her husband were present. But when they heard that Han Xiucha was brain dead, they still couldn't accept it. Doctor, I think he can still be saved. He even appeared on the news with me yesterday. Madam, I'm sorry. I know it's hard for you to accept this, but you must know, under normal circumstances, a person would die from a fall from such a height. But he even recorded it. I thought he could still be saved, but his injuries were too serious. My condolences, doctor. At this time, Father Han and Han Jie rushed into the hospital. How's my son? The doctor glanced at Father Han. Just as he was about to respond, Su Yu threw a slap across his face. 20 years ago, it was me. Now it's your son. You've indeed lost all humanity. Xiucha's already gone. You must be happy. What nonsense are you talking about? Father Han obviously couldn't accept the fact that Han Xiucha had left. Even Han Jie thought Su Yu was just trying to scare him. How could anything happen to Xiucha? If you don't believe me, you can go see for yourself. The father and son had no idea what had happened. It was only when they woke up that morning that they realized their phones had been switched off. So, they didn't even know Li Qing'ai had escaped. Chapter 1092. Separated by the white cloth, Han Xiucha was lying cold on the bed covered in blood. His departure was so sudden that all he left behind was an apology video to Tongning and Su Yu. Father Han looked in the direction Su Yu was pointing and spotted Han Xiucha lying motionless on the hospital bed. At this time, Han Jie rushed over and removed the white cloth. Han Xiucha was lying peacefully on the bed, completely motionless, and his body was still slightly warm. Xiucha, don't joke with your brother. Get up. Xiucha. Afterwards, Han Jie reached out his hand to touch Han Xiucha's cheek. But he was no longer breathing. He was like a mannequin. Son, Father Han called out as he walked over and saw Han Xiucha's body. So you couldn't hold it in any longer. She rushed into the room, picked up something from the room, and threw it at the father and son. Xiucha died because of you. All of you better remember these words. Father Han couldn't hold it in any longer as he held onto the door frame with trembling hands. At this moment, the 20-year grudge and everything that happened was nothing compared to Han Xiucha. The police have investigated and found that Xiucha received a text from you on his phone asking to meet him on the top floor of his apartment. That's when he died. Han Zhong, 20 years of grudges. Why didn't you die instead? Why did my son die instead? Why didn't you die as well? Father Han opened his mouth to say something. But at this time, he received a phone call from an overseas bank asking why he suddenly withdrew a large amount of cash and whether he had been scammed. Father Han snapped out of his daze and quickly looked at his bank accounts. But they had all been emptied by Li Qing'ai. What a snake. This was it. The money was stolen by that bitch, Li Qing'ai. After hearing this, Han Jie leaned to one side and laughed in ridicule. Last night, that bitch said she was going to find someone to teach Xiucha a lesson. I thought she was just saying it out of anger. I never expected that she would end up killing the brother that I cared about the most. Although our relationship has become so strained this time, I truly love him dearly. After hearing the father and son's words, Su Yu also laughed. In fact, she laughed so hard that tears rolled down her cheeks. 20 years, you've turned a little snake into a venomous snake. You can now hug your son's corpse and cry. With that, she turned and walked out of the hospital. She originally looked cool from behind, but as soon as she arrived outside the hospital, she squatted on the ground and cried her heart out. He had been harmed to such an extent by a mistress. 20 years of innocence and Han Xiucha's life. With this thought, Su Yu immediately said to her husband, Old Long, can you give Tongning a phone call? Call her. She's well informed. Help me find that bitch. I'll make her wish she was dead. Okay, I'll help you. Don't be too sad. As Suyu knelt on the ground and cried, the reporters were stopped not too far away from her. So, they pointed their long lenses at her pitiful face. But at this moment, she didn't care at all. After all, there was an even colder person lying in the hospital morgue covered in blood. When Tongning received a phone call from her husband, she was watching the entertainment news. A large number of reporters were waiting at the hospital to interview the Han family. After all, it wasn't common for a battle between wealthy families to end with a human life. Plus, Han Shocha's death was so sudden that it became a hot topic. Of course, the reporters chased after him. After speaking to Suyu, Tongning understood the reason behind Han Shocha's death. So, she immediately joined Mo Ting and Long Jie to look for Li Qing'ai. As a mistress, Li Qing'ai was even more disgusting than Mo Yuro. After all, no matter how shameless Mo Yuro was, she never wanted to take Tongning's life. But Li Qing'ai committed a heinous crime against a mother and son 20 years ago. This incident attracted a lot of attention in the entertainment industry. After all, before Han Shocha died, he wanted to apologize to Tongning and Suyu. Plus, the Han family's battle was extremely intense. As a result, the public began to discuss the matter. Tongning was used to being criticized, so there were always people who used the Xin, Xia Hanmo, and even Xiao Sun to slander Tongning. But Tongning's fans had gone through a series of eliminations and were now extremely loyal. So, whenever a comment like this was released, the fans would immediately refute it. How could you blame something like this on my Ning? I'm drunk. Didn't you see that before Han Shocha died, he wanted my Ning's forgiveness? Han Shocha's death definitely had something to do with the Han family. Please don't push the blame onto them. Han Shocha's death definitely had something to do with the Han family. Please don't push the blame onto them. Are you guys blind? Didn't you see Han Shocha kneel down and apologize? If his death had anything to do with my Ning, why would he apologize to my Ning? You're crazy. As a result, Tongning was no longer afraid of haters. In fact, ever since Han Shocha snuck into the fan club, Long Jie had organized a group of fans to discuss any topics or comments that weren't good for Tongning. At least, they couldn't allow passers-by to follow suit. But no matter what the public said, there was one thing that was true. Han Shocha was dead. In order to stop the public from talking, Father Han finally realized that he had lost everything. So, he told Han Jie to hold another press conference. But this time, he was going to explain Han Shocha's death to the public. His son was dead, and his wife was the one who ordered someone to kill him. Worst of all, his wife ran away with the money. This had nothing to do with Suyu or Tongning. It was all because of one person, Li Qing'ai. Everything that happened today was because of Li Qing'ai. Perhaps it was because of his old age, but after one morning, Han Jin noticed that Father Han's hair had turned a lot whiter. Father, are you okay? I think this is retribution. Father Han said, 20 years ago, I treated Suyu like that. So, God has come to punish me today. I lost my son and my fortune. Han Jie, do you know how much regret I feel? If Shocha could come back to life, I would give up everything. I would even admit that I slandered Suyu 20 years ago. But would he be able to come back? Father, I deserve it. Your mother was right. Why didn't I die instead? Father Han said as tears rolled down his face and landed on the back of his hand. Chapter 1093. Han Jie was also in a lot of pain. If he had stopped Li Qing'ai, he wouldn't have encouraged her, and Han Shocha would have ended up lying in the cold morgue. Han Jie had to bear a lot of responsibility for Han Shocha's death. After all, no matter how angry he was at Han Shocha, he was still the one that brought him up. An elder brother was like a father. So, how could he not feel regretful that his own brother had passed away? This was all Li Qing'ai's fault. So, even if he had to go to the ends of the earth, he was going to tear that woman apart. There's been a new development regarding Han Shocha's fall from a building. The Han family are holding another press conference in less than a day. His beloved son fell off the building. What happened to the Han family in less than 24 hours? All of a sudden, the news was focused on the Han family. In particular, they wanted to know the truth behind Han Shocha's fall from a building. But before the Han family held their press conference, they were simply making up stories based on hearsay. Everyone related to the incident, including Tongning, was labeled with all sorts of labels. However, Tongning's fans took the initiative this time and quickly clarified everything on various websites, asking the public to stop slandering someone else's reputation. 2 p.m. that day, the Han family once again appeared in front of the reporters. Unlike yesterday's arrogant Father Han, he looked haggard and old. As for Han Jie, who was following behind him, his eyes were red and swollen. It was obvious that he had suffered a huge blow from Han Xiuqi's death. This time, Father Han did not play any tricks. He simply approached the stage and bowed to the reporters. He then said in a hoarse voice, "As everyone knows, my son, Han Xiuqi, fell from a building in the wee hours of this morning. Even after the doctors tried their best to save him, my son still left me and the world. I would like to ask everyone not to make any unnecessary guesses. This incident has nothing to do with Tongning or her mother. I would like the media to stop implicating innocent people and stop spreading false rumors. In that case, can President Han tell us the reason why your son fell from a building?" Perhaps it was because Father Han had just experienced the pain of losing his son. The reporters were a lot gentler with their questions. They were not aggressive at all. "The reason my son fell off the building was because of my current wife, Li Qing'ai, because she held a grudge against Xiu Chei's accusations against her at the press conference. She spent money to hire someone to kill my son. In the end, my son fell off a building and died. The police have already launched a close investigation into this matter. The final result will be determined by the police. But Li Qing'ai is now on the run. I hope that through this press conference, everyone can help me spread the news. If anyone is able to provide accurate information about Li Qing'ai, I will reward them with $1 million in cash." Hearing this $1 million, the reporters were stunned. It seemed like the Han family really hated Li Qing'ai to the core, which was why they were willing to spend so much money just to find their enemy. From what President Han said, it seems like Li Qing'ai was the one who injured your son. So what happened 20 years ago was also caused by this woman. As soon as he heard the reporter's question, Father Han froze. Or perhaps he was trying to think of something. As soon as he thought of Han Xiuqi's cold body, his eyes began to tear up. "I admit that Li Qing'ai and I plotted against Suyu 20 years ago." Oh God, did he just admit it himself? So Suyu is actually innocent in what happened 20 years ago. Is he admitting it now because his son won't be coming back? His son's gone, so he's finally found his conscience. Countless reporters whispered amongst themselves. But at this moment, Father Han was not afraid at all. He was focused on finding Li Qing'ai and getting revenge for Han Xiuqi. 20 years ago, I returned home and ran into Suyu in bed with 2 men. But it was indeed a trap set up by Li Qing'ai. At that time, Suyu tried her best to explain herself, and I knew that she was innocent. But for the sake of some evil thoughts, I slandered my wife and ended up with a young and beautiful Li Qing'ai. I never imagined that 20 years later, this incident would end up taking my son's life. I thought if I didn't put up a pointless resistance, if I came out and apologized to Suyu, perhaps Xiuqi wouldn't have left me. But the backlash of fate made me pay a huge price. That's why I'm asking all of you to help me keep an eye out for Li Qing'ai and find her. I don't want anything else right now. I simply want justice for my son. As the reporters watched Father Han, who had angrily smashed the hotel screen yesterday, bow 3 times in a row, they couldn't help but sigh. Some people were just like this. Yesterday and today, they were completely different. After Father Han stepped off the stage, Han Jie also stepped onto the stage. He first covered his mouth to calm himself down before he gave a bitter smile to the media. How ironic. Just yesterday, our family was trying our best to deny what we did 20 years ago. Yet today we have no choice but to stand here and slap ourselves in the face. Xiuqi is dead. As soon as I heard the news, I felt like the sky had collapsed. I raised him myself, so I don't know how to describe my feelings. I love money and I love power. In fact, I've known how to fight for power since I was young. For example, I betrayed my mother, Suyu, 20 years ago. But Xiuqi is no longer here. At this moment, I suddenly feel like nothing is more important than my brother's life. Money? Power? I don't want any of that. I simply want my brother back. So, Li Qing'ai, I will definitely find you. Even if you run to the ends of the earth. Also, I'm sorry, Mom. Also, I'm sorry that Xiuqia didn't forget to apologize to Tongning before he died. He hurt you over and over again. He hurt innocent people. I'm truly sorry. Seeing this press conference, Su Yu and Tongning had reason to believe that Father Han and Son Han were truly affected by Han Xiuqia's death. I originally thought he no longer had a heart. Su Yu humphed coldly at the screen. Right now, the most important thing is to find Li Qing'ai, Tongning reminded. Auntie Su, let time resolve your grudge. But we need to find Li Qing'ai as soon as possible. I hate that the father and son weren't the ones that died. Chapter 1094. There was always an end to all grudges. Tongning never expected that in the end, Han Xiuqia's death would be the price to reveal the truth and allow Father Han and Han Jie to wake up to reality. Although Han Xiuqia caused a lot of trouble for her, especially by slandering her over and over again, at least he managed to correct himself when he found out that his mother was wronged. As for the way he knelt, he was covered in blood and left no room for escape. With this thought, Tongning took a deep breath. It was as if the past had turned to smoke. Tongning, are you willing to forgive Xiuqia? Hearing Su Yu's question, Tongning smiled. Of course, there's no debt between us. It's easy to forgive him. That evening, Mo Ting originally wanted to release a statement on Tongning's behalf, but Tongning told him that she had something to say. So, in the end, she used Mo Ting's account to release a statement. The dead are gone. That kneel was too heavy. Everything in the past has turned to smoke in my eyes. I forgive you, and I hope you can rest in peace. With such a heavy kneel, no matter how deep the hatred between them was, it was enough to wipe the slate clean. Although Han Xiuqia was despicable, I couldn't help but feel sad when I saw the video of his apology before he died. I originally thought that this man was a jerk that couldn't be saved, but who would have thought that he'd be able to turn the tables for me? Actually, Han Xiuqia wasn't particularly despicable. Look, he didn't know that his mother was wronged, so he was led astray from a young age and misunderstood women. But as soon as he found out that his mother was wronged, didn't he immediately turn around to help Su Yu? Regardless, it's such a shame. Hayes, seeing that Tongning has forgiven him, I'm sure he can rest in peace in heaven. A heavy death erases all sins. I can only hope that he can be a better person in his next life. As for Han Xiuqia, his actions after he fell from the building were too tragic. So, even though he had done something wrong in the past, he was still forgiven. As for the Han family, because they had learned the lesson they deserved, everyone's hatred for them disappeared. After all, one of them had lost his beloved son, while the other had lost his most beloved younger brother. In the end, they did not insist on obtaining power and wealth. Instead, they threw everything away. Therefore, the most important thing now was to find Li Qing'ai. But how could a person planning to escape be found so easily? Su Yu, Lu Che, Long Jie, and even the Han family spent a lot of effort to find this evil woman. But even after 2 days, they still had no results. Not long after, the police began to mobilize their forces. However, Long Jie managed to obtain some information from her own sources. It seems like someone saw Li Qing'ai go out to sea at the Golden Ring Pier. I don't know if this information is reliable, but this is the only lead we have. After hearing Long Jie's words, Tongning immediately pulled out a map and asked, "What is on the other side of the Golden Loop Pier?" It's a relatively closed island, but it's very convenient to get to Southeast Asia. Arrange for a helicopter to intercept them. Don't let them leave the country, Tongning said to Long Jie. Tell Lu Che and Annie Su about this. Carried out in secret. Okay, Long Jie nodded. This wasn't an accurate piece of information. It was all up to luck. She could only hope that Han Xiuqia's spirit in heaven would bless Long Jie with a successful intercept. Of course, they couldn't rule out the possibility that Li Qing'ai was trying to mislead them. But the Han family promised that they would find this woman no matter where she went. After all, she had killed their son. How could they let her go so easily? 3 hours later, Long Jie returned with news that they had successfully intercepted Li Qing'ai at the pier. The woman was indeed smart and cunning. She actually pretended to be patient zero. Unfortunately, she couldn't escape Lu Che's sharp eyes. Bring her back quietly. Don't hand her over to the police yet. Afterwards, Tongning notified Su Yu. Auntie Su, leave this matter to the Han father and son. All you need to do is keep an eye on them. Otherwise, you'll end up dirtying your hands. After all, they owe you. So you thought about it and agreed. But you need to tell the father and son not to injure her. After all, she will eventually be handed over to the police. Don't ruin your life for someone like that. I can't wait for them to ruin their life. Although Su Yu said this, there was no way she was going to allow her other son to be sent to prison. So, when she gave Han Jie a phone call, her tone was cold, but it was with good intentions. Tongning was the one that found her, so she will still be handed over to the police. If you're smart, don't do anything to her. After all, there are thousands of ways to torture a person. You guys owe Tongning another favor. Han Jie, what happened 20 years ago? I'll just take it that you were too young and made the wrong choice. I'll forgive you, but I won't accept you back. I just hope that you'll behave yourself from now on. After all, your brother is already gone. I don't want anything to happen to you. I understand. I won't make things difficult for Tongning again. Han Jie replied. A moment later, Su Yu hung up the phone. Meanwhile, Father Han looked at Han Jie with anticipation. She's been found, Han Jie replied. Tongning used her connections to help us find her. So, Father, let's do what we can and not cross any lines. In the end, Tongning still needs to hand her over to the police. After hearing this, Father Han nodded his head. I understand. As long as I can see this woman again, I will be satisfied. Because of the father and son's cooperation, Tongning asked Lu Che to arrange for Li Qing'ai to be locked up in a quiet house nearby. Meanwhile, Li Qing'ai was simply locked up. No one used any force or mistreated her. There was only a door between them. Father Han wanted to rush into the house and snap the woman's neck. But he couldn't do that because he still had a son to take care of. So through the door, Father Han yelled at Li Qing'ai, Li Qing'ai, you slut. As soon as Li Qing'ai heard this familiar voice, she took a few steps back in fear. Why? Why are you grabbing me? What do you want to do to me? Do you still have a nerve to ask? I didn't kill Han Xiuqia. I simply sent someone to teach him a lesson. He was the one that struggled and ran away. It had nothing to do with me. After hearing this, Han Jie couldn't help but kick open the door and grab onto Li Qing'ai's neck. Would you believe that I'm going to strangle you to death right now? Chapter 1095. Li Qing'ai glared at Han Jie. She glared at him. You wouldn't dare? Even if you strangle me to death, Han Xiuqia won't be able to come back to life. Since Li Qing'ai was on the run, it meant that she was prepared for what would happen if she was caught. Strangled? Wasn't that expected? There's nothing I wouldn't dare to do. Han Jie tightened his grip. As soon as he looked at Li Qing'ai's face, he would imagine Han Xiuqia kneeling on the ground covered in blood. But at this time, Father Han found a baseball bat from the house and swung it at Li Qing'ai from behind. After a painful cry, Han Jie immediately let go of Li Qing'ai, and she fell to the ground twitching. He wouldn't dare, but I do. Dad, I'm already half dead. My son is dead. There's no reason I can't get justice. Father Han threw away the baseball bat and squatted on the ground. He then looked at Li Qing'ai. For 20 years, I ignored my conscience and treated you like a treasure. Yet, you actually killed my son? Li Qing'ai fell to the ground, screaming in pain. If he hit her with the bat, she might not even be able to keep her legs. Li Qing'ai, let's go to jail together. But I want you to be crippled for the rest of your life. This is the price you have to pay for killing my son. Li Qing'ai couldn't withstand the intense pain and fainted. At this time, Father Han called the police and told them that he had turned himself in. Dad, why are you doing this? Han Jie hurriedly stopped him. You're my only relative now. Don't tell me you don't care about me anymore. Shao Jie, I've let you down, and I've let your mother and Xiuqia down. If I didn't do this, I wouldn't be able to take it lying down. So, Please apologize to your mother for me. Everything I did to Li Qing'ai today was purely for my own sake. It has nothing to do with any of you. Dad, listen to me. Soon, the police arrived. Apart from taking Li Qing'ai away, they also took Father Han away. That night, the media quickly received news that Li Qing'ai's legs were broken by Father Han when she was arrested. Afterwards, Father Han turned himself in and sent Li Qing'ai and himself to jail. Although it's cruel, I will definitely slaughter the entire family of the person that killed my son. Good break. It's pretty environmentally friendly to deal with the garbage that you create yourself. A battle between the rich and powerful ended with 1 dead, 1 injured, and 2 in prison. There are no winners. The one who suffered the most is Han Xiucha. The outside world was very sad about what happened to this family. They watched as a good family died and went to jail. Even so, Father Han still received redemption in the end and regained his conscience as a human. Han Jia was now all alone. Apart from dealing with Han Xiucha's funeral, he also had to hire a lawyer to help Father Han with his lawsuit. So, it could be said that he was the busiest person. As for Su Yu, even though she said that she no longer accepted Han Jia, when she saw her son all alone, how could she stand by and do nothing? After all, out of the 4 of them, only 2 were left. No matter how much hatred she had, Papa Han's strike was enough to vent her anger. Father Han's motive was obvious. 20 years ago, he had broken her leg. 20 years later, he wanted Li Qing'ai to suffer the pain of not being able to walk freely. So, after struggling for a long time, Su Yu gave Han Jia a phone call. I will help you deal with your brother's matter. You can focus on your father. Mom, Dad asked me to apologize to you. I got it. Su Yu did not say anything else as she simply replied. But, now that Tongning was in prison, no matter how much hatred she had, it was time for it to dissipate. After receiving Su Yu's response, Han Jia finally felt a little better. So, he personally called Hai Rui to thank Tongning and Mo Ting. After all, Tongning was the one that helped him find Han Xiucha, so he was going to remember her kindness. I never expected that Father Han would end up doing what he did. That night, when Tongning heard that Han Jia had called her to thank her, she couldn't help but sigh. I thought the father and son would, at most, scare Li Qing'ai a little. Father Han did indeed find a mistress and made a lot of mistakes. But, from start to finish, he never showed that he cared about money. He actually cared about Han Xiucha a lot. He just wasn't good at expressing it. His son was killed by his lover. No father would be able to take this lying down. Mo Ting said as he placed his gaze on his 2 sons and Yin Er. From now on, no one will ever cause trouble for me again. But, for some reason, I feel like having Han Xiucha nitpick on me isn't a bad thing. After all, if he was dead, then there would be nothing left. But, no matter what, Su Yu's injustice had been cleared. For her, this was undoubtedly a release from the shackles in her heart. In the past, she could only be a voice actress, but from now on, she had a limitless world. Because of this, Old Long admired Tongning and even offered her the best gift. From now on, when the Ant Queen 2 and the Ant Queen 3 are released, remember to invite me. Adding a martial arts superstar to a sci-fi film is a great selling point. When the time comes, I can act in it out of friendship. Money is not an issue. If that's the case, that would be great, Tongning laughed. Tongning laughed. After all, a martial arts superstar like Old Long wasn't someone that could be moved by money or power. At his age, at his status, if he didn't nod his head, no one would be able to invite this big shot. Although she hadn't started preparing for the Ant Queen 2 yet, she had plenty of resources to choose from. It was much better than before, when she had to travel overseas to find a suitable actor. In the end, Father Han was sentenced to 3 years in prison for intentional assault. Meanwhile, Li Qing'ai was sentenced to 20 years in prison due to evidence that she had hired a hitman. In other words, by the time she was released from prison, she would be at least 60 years old. As soon as Father Han heard about this, he let out a sigh. Luckily, it's not a death sentence, because death is the best release. 20 years in prison is more than enough for her to suffer. Dad, I will wait for you. I will wait for you to come home. This was the last time Han Jie saw Father Han before he was sentenced to prison. Because of Han Xiuqi's death, the father and son experienced a complete change. The weather suddenly became colder and colder. The entertainment industry still appeared to be bustling with activity as people came and went. This year, the top songs chart was still dominated by the little Empress Xinglan. Meanwhile, Luo Sheng was currently acting as Lin Sheng's sidekick. Being the sidekick of the Fei Tian Best Actor, Luo Sheng had earned a lot. As of late, the hottest news was that the Ant Queen was getting closer and closer to release. Chapter 1096. The reason why Tongning didn't prepare for the Ant Queen 2 was because the Ant Queen hadn't officially been released yet. For the sake of the Fei Tian Awards, Immerse deliberately delayed its release. But, surprisingly, the film's popularity did not drop. Awards ceremonies were being held on all the major platforms, but none of them caught Tongning's attention. Her biggest wish this year was to help Qiao San win back the Best Director award that was supposed to belong to him. On the eve of the release of The Ant Queen, it started snowing in Beijing. Under the cover of the cold winter, Tongning fulfilled her promise and booked all the theaters in the country so that her fans could see the film that she and Xiao San had spent so much time and effort on. At the same time, there were also a few other outstanding films being released. But everyone knew about Tongning's The Ant Queen, so they automatically avoided it and changed the release date to ensure it was released before Tongning's film. This was the only way to ensure that fans wouldn't lose interest in the other films after seeing The Ant Queen. Avoiding Tongning's film was the industry's default response. After all, they couldn't compete with her in anything. So, they did everything they could to avoid embarrassing themselves. On the night of the official release, President Mo finished work early and returned home. After he chased away the cold, he approached Tongning and said, "Pack your things. We're going out, huh? Let's go watch a film." President Mo coaxed his 3 children to sleep and instructed the nutritionist to take good care of them before he left the house with Tongning. The couple wore thick coats and black gloves as they walked hand in hand to the entrance of the theater. Luckily, it was winter, so they didn't want to be discovered. As long as they wore a scarf, they would be able to conceal themselves. Originally, they could have chosen a luxurious venue and watched the film in a large and comfortable theater. But Immerse knew that Tongning wanted to know the audience's thoughts as soon as they appeared. So, he decided to bring Tongning along with him. After arriving at the theater, Immerse parked his car while Tongning waited at the entrance. At this time, a 5-year-old girl suddenly pounced into Tongning's arms and hugged her legs. "I recognize you, you're Tongning. You've appeared on a lot of newspapers." Tongning was a little surprised. She couldn't understand where this child had come from. She then squatted down and asked, "Where are your parents?" "Tongning, can you give me an autograph?" Tongning was already in her early 30s, yet a little girl called her by her full name. So, Tongning smiled as she pinched the little girl's red cheeks. Of course. Afterwards, the little girl's mother ran over. She covered her mouth in excitement. Tongning quickly made a shushing gesture. "Don't make a sound. Are you also here to watch a movie?" The young woman asked in surprise as she pointed at the cinema. "Are you alone? Tangling and President Tangling?" At this time, Immerse finished parking his car and returned to Tongning's side. Tongning turned and looked at Immerse helplessly. "I've been recognized. Don't worry, I won't tell anyone. It's just, which match did you guys watch? Can I go with you?" Watching The Ant Queen with a little girl is a little gory. "I don't recommend it," Tongning laughed. "It's okay. I'll ask her dad to take her to watch cartoons. Can I sit next to you?" "Sure." Tongning nodded her head happily. The 3 of them entered the cinema together. As they arrived early, there weren't many fans in the cinema. Tongning looked around and felt a little disappointed. "Why are you nervous again?" "Because I care." Tongning immediately adjusted her breathing and calmed herself down. "I've waited too long for this day. Ting, did you know? Xiao San will definitely see it. Don't worry." The woman sitting next to Tongning felt a sense of familiarity when she saw how nervous Tongning was. It turned out this legendary woman actually acted like a little girl in front of Immerse. She wasn't as simple as the rumors made her out to be. She had a lot of emotions. Even though she appeared elegant, it couldn't hide her nervousness. Tongning, you're easy to get along with. It's not as cold as the rumors say. There was a 5-minute countdown to the start of the film. Finally, fans started streaming into the theater. One empty seat after another. The entire theater was filled to the brim. But Tongning's nervousness began again. Just because the theater was full didn't mean they would be able to sit until the end. Although she received high praises at the pre-screening, it wasn't impossible to rule out the possibility that there were some people that liked to show off. The people that truly determined the success of the Ant Queen had always been the audience. Afterwards, the film officially started playing. For over 2 hours, only 2 or 3 people stood up to go to the bathroom. In fact, they ran back and forth as if they were afraid of missing something. At the last second, the lights came back on. As Tongning watched the fans stand up from their seats and smile excitedly, she suddenly felt at ease. Because from the reaction of the audience, she could see the responsibility on her shoulders. She had spent so much effort and even sacrificed her life to produce a film like this. But what was it for? Wasn't it for this moment? WTF, it's so exciting. The Ant Queen is disgusting. But after watching the entire film, I felt extremely satisfied and comfortable. The few months of waiting was worth it. It was so good that I wanted to cry. It's indeed produced by Tongning. She lives up to her reputation. I've decided from now on whether Tongning acts in a film or produces a film, as long as it's related to the film industry, I'm happy. I hope God doesn't force her to leave the film industry. She's the #1 domestic sci-fi film. It's Tongning, and it's also the Ant Queen. Her ears were filled with the exclamations of the fans after watching the Ant Queen. Everyone was extremely excited. If they had to describe it in one word, it would be stunned. It was as if they couldn't wait to share it with the people around them. This scene made Tongning want to cry. From a moment she decided to make a sci-fi film. Almost 2 years had passed. It was thanks to Chiao Sun and Mo Ting's endless support that she got to where she was today. Everything was worth it. Outside the theater, snowflakes were still falling. But because of the screening of the Ant Queen, the theater was bustling with activity. It had been a long time since something like this happened. The last time something like this happened was when Hai Rue released a trailer for the Ant Queen. Indeed, the only person that could surpass Tongning was herself. Please, Tongning, make as many films as possible. Make 2 every year. Tongning, nothing can stop you from being my goddess. Seeing the overwhelming amount of comments online, Tongning was satisfied. So, she left the theater with Mo Ting. However, at this time, Mo Ting discovered a frozen baby by the side of his car. Chapter 1097. What's wrong? Seeing this, Tongning immediately ran over to his side. She watched as he bent over and picked up the baby. Whose child is this? Mo Ting shook his head and looked around. He did not see anyone suspicious, so he concluded that the baby was an abandoned child. Let's take her to the hospital first. I'll ask Lu Che to get in touch with the cinema surveillance cameras and find the child's parents. Okay. The couple quickly rushed the child to a nearby hospital. After the doctor's timely rescue, the child's life wasn't in danger, but there were other problems. Sir, this child doesn't seem to have any birth defects, but there are a lot of injuries on her body. It seems she's been beaten up a lot. Are you sure this isn't your child? Seeing this, Mo Ting removed his scarf and revealed his identity. I found this child beside my car. After seeing Mo Ting's identity, the doctor did not ask any further. After all, everyone knew that Mo Ting had 2 sons and a daughter. So, the child's identity was still up for investigation. Of course, if the man was Mo Ting, then the woman behind him would naturally be Tongning. Due to Mo Ting's authority, the doctor did not announce their visit. After confirming that the child had recovered, he said to the couple, "Since this isn't your child, I suggest you call the police and let them handle it. That's the best way to handle it." Tongning looked at the little girl lying on the hospital bed. She was only a little older than Yin-Er. She wondered how heartless a mother would be to abandon her own child. Meanwhile, Luce retrieved the surveillance footage from the cinema's parking lot. President, according to the footage, we discovered that the person that left the child beside your car was the supermodel Liang Yongyu, the model that's been in a relationship with a rich businessman. Contact her manager and tell her to come pick up the child, Mo Ting instructed. Okay, President. Seeing that Mo Ting had already contacted the child's parents, the doctor did not say anything else. Mo Ting did not send the child to the police station either. Otherwise, the newspapers would be in an uproar the next day. So, the couple temporarily returned to Hyatt Regency with the child. About an hour later, Luce arrived at Hyatt Regency with Liang Yongyu. He then carried the child to her. Your status in the industry isn't low. Why can't you afford to raise child? Liang Yongyu was only in her early 20s, but she still looked young and inexperienced. As soon as she saw the child, she placed her hand on his face guiltily. Assistant Liu, you have no idea, but I gave birth to 2 children for that man. But they're both daughters. You know, those rich businessmen all want their sons to inherit the family business. So, because I gave birth to 2 daughters in a row, I don't even have a title. That's fine, but that scum actually abused my daughters. I had no choice but to bring my daughter out when he was on a business trip. I had no choice but to take her with me while he was on a business trip. With this thought, the female model directly knelt on the floor and begged, Assistant Liu, can I beg you to adopt my daughter? Liang Yongyu, I can to you. After all, there were too many people in the industry that knew how to put on an act. I'm begging you. I'm begging Tongning. I'm begging President Mo. I saw President Mo's car today and recognized it. That's why I left my daughter beside his car. I can give you money. I simply want my child to live a safe and sound life. Liang Yongyu's tear-stained face was moving. But Luce understood one thing. In the industry, the prettier a person was, the more vicious they were. So, even though Long Jia had once been bullied because of her gender, Luce couldn't be easily fooled. Afterwards, Luce relayed Liang Yongyu's words to Mo Ting and Tongning. President, madam, that's what happened. She married a rich businessman, but was asked to have a child first. Only by having a son can she enter a wealthy family? Tongning shook her head helplessly. Every woman wants a long-term meal ticket. That's why they waste their youth and pride. This Liang Yongyu's words are full of loopholes. Go and reject her, Mo Ting said. She chose the rules of the game herself. Yes, President. After receiving his instructions, Luce left Hyatt Regency. At this time, Tongning had a complicated expression on her face. Her instincts told her that the situation wasn't as simple as it seemed. What if it's true? Tongning suddenly asked. Then, the child will either be tortured to death or stolen by Liang Yongyu and freeze to death. Why should the child take responsibility for the adult's mistakes? After speaking, Tongning turned and looked at the 3 children in the nursery. Everyone has their own fate, and they have to bear the consequences. Go have a bath and get some rest. And Mo Ting comforted. It wasn't that Tongning was a saint. This was a feeling that only someone with a child would understand. Of course, if everyone came looking for her when they were in trouble, she wouldn't be able to worry about them all even if she had 10 hearts. Luce quickly relayed the couple's words to Liang Yongyu. Since you gave birth to the child, you have a responsibility to take good care of it. No matter what your situation is, it's irresponsible for you to leave the child by the side of the car. I'm sorry, but it's not appropriate for the president and madam to interfere with other people's family matters. Please leave. After hearing this, Liang Yongyu looked at Luce in despair. She once again knelt in front of Luce. I know I'm young and inexperienced and I made a mistake, but the child is innocent. If that person finds her, she'll definitely die. I beg of you. Why don't you look for someone else? No one is willing to help me. Liang Yongyu burst into tears. I beg of you. How can you expect someone else to take care of the child that you gave birth to? Luce asked calmly. This is a life, not a cat or a dog. This isn't a vegetable on the streets. This is a living person. How can someone agree to this? Miss Liang, please don't force me. Please reconsider. I beg of you. Luce shook his head. You can give up everything and run away with your daughter. But You're greedy for what you have right now and want someone else to take care of your daughter for you. Don't you think that's too much? Miss Liang, please leave. Luce rejected Liang Yongyu decisively. Luce decisively rejected Liang Yongyu. Even though his heart ached for the child, it wasn't something that he could help just because he had good intentions. Seeing that she couldn't beg Luce, Liang Yongyu had no choice but to leave in despair with her daughter in her arms. But, just as Tongning expected, she placed the child somewhere else and tried to find someone to take care of her. Chapter 1098. Luce followed Liang Yongyu the entire time and watched as she abandoned the child. So, he waited for 3 hours, but Liang Yongyu did not return. In the end, Luce had no choice but to follow Tongning's instructions and carry the child back to Hyatt Regency. We don't meet the criteria to adopt, so we need to find a good family for the child. Of course, we need to first verify that everything Liang Yongyu says is true. Otherwise, return the child to the father. Tongning instructed Luce carefully. Yes, madam. Also, we can't let Liang Yongyu know about this. That's natural. Of course, Tongning had no idea that this incident had planted a seed of hatred in Liang Yongyu's heart. To Tongning, she saved the child. But to Liang Yongyu, Tongning was the one who did nothing to save the child. As a result, Liang Yongyu had no choice but to abandon the child. Speaking of Liang Yongyu, everyone in the entertainment industry knew that she came from a beauty pageant and gained fame with a single dance at a banquet. As a result, she caught the eye of the heir of a diamond kingdom and became his mistress. Who would have thought the story of a gifted scholar and a beautiful woman was actually bound by the shackles of the world? A wealthy family, of course, had more fights, and a son was the easiest tool for a woman to gain a foothold in. Liang Yongyu took a huge risk to give birth to 2 children for the heir of a diamond kingdom. But because they were daughters, she ended up being despised. After Luce's investigation, he discovered that the Zhai family from the Diamond Kingdom were indeed interested in men. Liang Yongyu did indeed give birth to a daughter, but she died before she was even half a year old. From this, it seemed, Liang Yongyu wasn't lying. Only those that experienced it would know how deep the waters of the rich and powerful were. One day after the incident, Liang Yongyu did not return to the place where she abandoned the child. From the looks of it, she had completely given up on her daughter. Or perhaps she felt that rather than staying in the Zhai family and being tortured to death, she might as well leave the child to fend for herself. Perhaps a kind-hearted person would take care of her. Since that's the case, hand the child over to a needy couple. Don't tell anyone about this. I will arrange it properly, madam. A few days later, Luce told Tongning that he had already arranged the best place for the little girl. She had been adopted by a well-educated couple. The couple loved the little girl, so they agreed to treat her like their own. Just like that, the incident came to an end. Tongning didn't bother to remember the snowy night of the Ant Queen's premiere, when a woman knelt on the ground and begged them. But even until the very end, Tongning did not relent. Perhaps she would soon forget about it. But for Liang Yongyu, it was an unforgettable hatred. 5 days later, the nationwide box office statistics revealed that the Ant Queen had already surpassed $1 billion. It broke many records and was highly praised. Faced with this kind of box office and good reviews, Hyrule decided to bring the Ant Queen overseas and release it in Europe and the US. Of course, Jones was the most suitable person to bridge the gap. Afterwards, Mo Ting sent a sample of the Ant Queen to Jones. After all, this was Tongning's first result as his disciple. Early the next morning, Tongning received a phone call from Jones. I've seen the Ant Queen. As my disciple, you've met the requirements. Jones, I've already discussed with Xiao Ting about bringing the rights to the Ant Queen to the US. I hope more sci-fi fans will know of your existence. I want them to understand that the clash of Eastern and Western culture can create many different sparks. I'm looking forward to seeing the Ant Queen in the US. Thank you, Jones. Rather than thanking me, you should thank yourself for your hard work. I'm looking forward to the Ant Queen too. I'll do my best. Jones couldn't help but smile on the other side of the phone. He had enough reason to believe that the birth of the Ant Queen would give Tongning a whole new meaning. Just like the public said. Apart from her other roles, just the fact that she's the producer of the Ant Queen is enough for her to be proud of for the rest of her life. The Ant Queen is indeed the best sci-fi film in the country. No, it's one of the best films in the country. Before Tongning filmed The Ant Queen, I didn't believe that we had a place on the international stage. But now, I'm confident that even if The Ant Queen doesn't do it, Tongning's other films will. It's just a matter of time. I'm so happy that when other countries mention that we have XXX and his film becomes famous on the international stage, we can also proudly say that we have Tongning. Afterwards, the TV began to play some interviews with passers-by. Even though they weren't fans of celebrities, whenever Tongning was mentioned, they would still raise their thumbs up. Is she the producer of The Ant Queen? She's quite impressive. Of course I know her. She's been my goddess for a long time. Who in Beijing doesn't know about Tongning? I simply hope that The Ant Queen 2 will be released soon. So, to everyone, Tongning's significance wasn't just because she was an actress or a model, but because she had a whole new impression of her. She was synonymous with good films. Seeing Tongning's achievements, Liu Che immediately congratulated him in his office. President, the madam is the work that you're most satisfied with. After hearing this, Ting thought about all the hardships that Tongning had gone through and all the pain that she had endured. Only he knew how hard Tongning had worked in a place that didn't see the light of day. She's not a work of art. She's the person that I cherish the most in my life. I misspoke. Liu Che smiled and changed the topic. President, should we give the madam a present to congratulate her? Thinking about it, it had been a long time since he had given her a present. But he knew that she definitely wouldn't like ordinary things for someone like Ting, who always had a plan. The most difficult thing in the world was to give Tongning a present. If it's hard to find an opportunity, a celebration dinner would be a great excuse. Ting glared at Liu Che. Liu Che immediately shut his mouth. Help me apply for the Fei Tian Best Actor Award. Huh? Liu Che didn't quite understand. What? Am I not qualified to do so? No. It's just that you've never cared, Liu Che replied. Of course I don't care about the award, but I care about what I can do at the event. Chapter 1099. The CEO of Hai Rui, Ting, was going to compete for the Fei Tian Best Actor Award. As soon as news of this spread, everyone in the industry was shocked. Everyone could tell that Ting only acted because he wanted to support his wife. He had no intention of developing his career in this area. So, why was he suddenly interested in the Best Actor Award? The big boss was indeed the big boss. Perhaps, only he knew what he was thinking. Of course, the 5 most popular Fei Tian awards this year were already competing with each other. But, with the addition of Ting, how could they possibly compete with Ting's acting skills? However, no one knew why Ting was so good at acting. He wasn't trained in acting and didn't have much experience. So, how could his character be so good? Even Tongning couldn't help but laugh at him. For the big boss of the entertainment industry to compete with other actors for the Best Actor Award, let alone the public, even I don't understand. You've already won Best Actress twice. Why can't I win Best Actor once? You're different, Ting. Did you know? Did you know that you were born with dignity? Tongning replied. Ting smiled without explaining. Everything he did was to give his wife a surprise. Just as the Fei Tian Awards were about to start voting, Bai Qindong and Shiner received good news. They were about to hold their engagement ceremony. Although Tongning rarely heard from Shiner, because she was with the weirdo Bai Qindong, she was still happy that their relationship had come to fruition. The ceremony was to be held on a private island in a week's time. This was in line with Bai Qindong's style of doing things. He was a weirdo to begin with, so no matter what he did, it wasn't surprising. But after the invitation was sent out, Han Shiner still gave Tongning a phone call. Ning Jia, although I really hope that you can attend my engagement ceremony, Han Yufan will most likely be there too. He's truly changed. But I'm still worried that the two of you will feel awkward when you meet. After hearing Han Shiner's words, Tongning turned to look at Ting, who was sitting at his desk. She thought to herself, Han Yufan and she were no longer in the same world. So why should she mind? So, she calmly replied, I definitely won't be late for your big day. Then it's a deal. See you next week. President Imo was sitting not too far away. Although his eyes were focused on his documents, his ears had already perked up when he heard Han Yufan's name. You're not going to ask for my opinion before agreeing? Hearing Mo Ting's sudden words, Tongning was confused. I just might bump into a stranger. I don't think I need to ask for your opinion, right? For Tongning, the past was a thing of the past. She was now a mother of 3 children. Plus, with President Mo's magnanimity, I don't think you would mind such a small matter. Besides, you're so prestigious, no one can compare to you. Giving me so many compliments only makes me more suspicious. Mo Ting withdrew his gaze and returned it to the documents in front of him. Tongning smiled. She knew she had already dealt with this man. Although they were an old couple, Mo Ting still felt jealous from time to time. But now that President Mo was so concerned about it when they met, Tongning felt it was best to avoid them when the time came. In reality, the only reason Han Shiner and Bai Qindong were able to get married was because they had fought hard with the family. Otherwise, with Shiner's background, it would have been difficult for her to enter the Bai family. Bai Qindong had always been a crafty person. After finding out that his mother was trying to stop him, he decided to use his best actor skills to his advantage. He spent a good few months acting as a depressed patient and constantly threatened to kill himself. In fact, Mother Bai was so scared by him that her heart stopped a few times. Her son was seriously ill and only loved one woman. If she couldn't satisfy him, then she no longer needed to be a mother. So, she agreed to their marriage. Of course, no one knew about this, and the Bai family couldn't reveal it to the public. So, her biggest wish was to not agitate Bai Qindong in case he accidentally killed her son. The media were quite curious about the relationship between Bai Qindong and Han Shiner. Back then, for the sake of a beautiful woman, Bai Qindong was willing to give up his career. After getting together with Han Shiner, he went into hiding. No one knew where he was or what he was doing over the past 2 years. He was probably the weirdest artist in the entertainment industry. The engagement ceremony was the same. Although the news was made public, it was held on a private island. Without Bai Qindong's permission, the media had no way of entering. Soon, a week had passed. On the day of Bai Qindong and Shiner's engagement ceremony, Tongning and Mo Ting arrived with Yin Er in their arms. Tongning was dressed in a light yellow dress and a white coat. She looked more like a rich heiress than an international superstar. Meanwhile, Yin Er was in Mo Ting's arms, a respectable man holding an adorable baby. This was a scene that no one had ever seen before. After arriving on the island, Tongning immediately spotted Shiner dressed in a white wedding dress. It had been a long time since she last saw her, and she seemed to have matured. Especially with the happy smile on her face, she looked exceptionally bright and eye-catching. However, Bai Qindong, who was standing beside her, did not look too happy. After all, who liked to see another man constantly staring at their wife? Ning Jia. Han Shiner spotted Tongning from afar and spotted Yin Er in Mo Ting's arms. So, she immediately ran over. Is that Yin Er? Uh-huh. She's so cute. She's so cute. Han Shiner teased as Bai Qindong approached Mo Ting. Did you do this on purpose? Huh. You knew I was getting engaged. Did you want me to accelerate my pregnancy? Bai Qindong asked as he gritted his teeth. I'm already a father of 3. What do you think? Mo Ting asked. The sooner we have children, the better Auntie will be at ease. It's bad enough that you brought a child, yet you stole my limelight. Although the 2 cousins each had their own style, when it came to overall strength, Mo Ting was still superior. Bai Qindong's main advantage lay in one word: strange. The 3 chatted and laughed. At this time, Tongning spotted Han Yufan standing not too far away from Han Shiner. After not seeing him for a long time, Tongning felt this man was quite unfamiliar. Chapter 1100. The Han Yufan at this moment was no longer as high-spirited as he was in the past. Although Tianyi had always been a small, third-rate agency. Han Yufan had always treated it like a big name. Following Tong Ning's gaze, Mo Ting spotted Han Yufan, standing not too far away. But if it was another love rival, he might have made a move. But the current Han Yufan was not a threat at all. So, Mo Ting simply glanced at him for a moment before looking away. With just one glance, Han Yufan realized the difference between him and Mo Ting. He then looked at the little girl in Mo Ting's arms. This was Tong Ning's third child. She had 2 daughters and was now a national treasure in the entertainment industry. Ever since Tong Ning married Mo Ting, she and Han Yufan were no longer in the same world. So, Han Yufan didn't want to be snubbed. So he turned around and walked away from Tong Ning. He knew that he was no longer worthy. No matter how much regret he felt, he couldn't get Tong Ning's forgiveness. Above all, to Tong Ning, he was nothing. Han Xiner noticed Tong Ning's gaze and patted the back of her hand. Don't take it to heart. He knows what he's worth. Okay, the engagement ceremony is about to start. Hurry and get ready, Tong Ning urged Han Xiner. In that case, I'll go get ready. After speaking, Han Xiner held onto her dress and headed to the specially prepared makeup room. At this time, Mo Ting suddenly pointed to a young man wearing gold-rimmed glasses and said to Tong Ning, the second master of the Zhai family. He's the one that Liang Yongyu climbed up to, isn't he? But look at his female companion. She brought someone else with her. Tong Ning looked at the second master of the Zhai family and smirked. I'm afraid, even if Liang Yongyu gave birth to a son, he wouldn't get the status. For the Zhai family, the person they brought out and the person they raised at home are 2 completely different people. No wonder their daughter has no status. Tong Ning shook her head. The Zhai family completely treat women like tools to play with. Perhaps the upper class had an unimaginable level of corruption. There were plenty of people like the Zhai family. Even if their husband was rich, the wife couldn't do anything about it. As long as they had control over the finances, they could turn a blind eye to their husband's affairs. I pity her 2 daughters. I hope Liang Yongyu can give birth to a son soon. If it's a daughter, I don't know where she's going to throw her away. Liang Yongyu was indeed going to give birth to a son, but that was a matter for another time. Tong Ning and Mo Ting didn't want to interact with people from families like that. In fact, they looked down on each other. However, because the Bei family and the Zhai family had business dealings, they decided to attend this banquet. Otherwise, they would have been completely unrelated to the Zhai family. The Bei family has such a big family business. Why would they marry a sickly daughter-in-law? This is truly unimaginable. That's right. Other than being a little young, this little wife of his really has nothing to show off. Didn't you hear, just now? I've never seen a sports car in my life. I heard that the young master of the Bei family took a fancy to her and insisted on marrying her. I wonder how long she can last. Marrying one and finding 3 outside, isn't that the same? That's true. A few wealthy madams sat to one side and chatted casually. Their conversation never strayed away from Xiner's background. After all, Xiner was a typical Cinderella. She had nothing, yet she had won against the so-called daughters of their families. So, how could they not be jealous? However, it was fine if Tong Ning heard these words. But if Xiner heard them, she would definitely be hurt. But there was nothing that could be done. She had already entered the industry, so this was something that Xiner had to face. The wealthy madams also noticed Tong Ning. They had always looked down on entertainers, but they did not dare to look down on Tong Ning. It was simple. Apart from being in the entertainment industry, Tong Ning was also the CEO of Tangkor and had a century-old perfume empire. She wasn't someone that they could look down on. Soon, the engagement ceremony began. Han Xiner wore a starry wedding dress as she walked down the petal-covered white carpet. She held onto Bei Qindong's arm as they walked to the front of the stage. This was an open-air chapel that Bei Qindong had specially built for Han Xiner. So, on top of the chapel, there were a lot of secrets between the 2 of them. Bei Qindong was aware that there were a lot of people present that disliked Xiner and looked down on her for marrying into a wealthy family despite her background. Since she was young, Xiner had always been sensitive, so she could sense how sharp the gazes around her were. So, Bei Qindong held onto Xiner's arm tightly and used his hands to give her courage and strength. Han Xiner knew what kind of family she was about to join. She had previously resisted it, but after seeing Bai Chandong act for the past few months, she even believed that he was suffering from depression. So, she didn't dare to leave his side in case her heart ached. Although Father Bai and Mother Bai weren't satisfied with Xiner's background, they were satisfied with her personality. After all, she was the only one that could tolerate Bai Chandong's temper and quirks. As parents, there was nothing else they could ask for, especially since Bai Chandong was suffering from depression. So, as long as Bai Chandong wanted something, the old couple would prepare it for him. This was equivalent to announcing Xiner's identity as the Bai family's daughter-in-law. Of course, they had no idea that Bai Chandong's acting skills were also part of this. But no matter how good his acting skills were, he was bound to be exposed one day. After all, acting was acting, it wasn't the truth. If that happened, how would Bai Chandong end up? He had always been like this. He wasn't lacking in ability. But he didn't like to be like Mo Ting, who was calm and reserved, but had a black belly that could kill his enemies with one move. He didn't like to play by the rules. As long as he could achieve his goal, he didn't care about the method. Back when he was chasing after Xiner, he had already revealed this side of him. And this time, it was even more so. Xiner knew that what she was doing wasn't right. But there was nothing she could do about it. In this lifetime, a person was bound to meet a nemesis. And Bai Chandong was undoubtedly her nemesis. Throughout the entire engagement ceremony, Bai Chandong expressed to everyone that they shouldn't stare at my wife. It wasn't until the couple boarded the yacht that Bai Chandong's resentment finally disappeared. This was the reason why Bai Chandong didn't want to take Xiner with him. He hated it when other men teased the cute Xiner. After the ceremony was over, Father Bai and Mother Bai welcomed the guests to their seats. As soon as they saw Yen Er in Mo Ting's arms, they were overjoyed. Look at this little face, it's so fair and tender. I wonder when that bastard at home will give me a grandson to hold. Chapter 1101. But the rascal is sick, so he won't be able to have a child for a while. Mother Bai sighed. Tongning and Mo Ting looked at each other without saying a word. Han Xiner had secretly told Tongning about this during the banquet. After hearing this, although Tongning couldn't object to it, she didn't like the way Bai Chandong took the risk. Women liked stability, especially when it came to matters like marriage. Xiner was already in a weak position, yet Bai Chandong had created obstacles in front of her and his parents. Although they might not be discovered yet, they were bound to be exposed one day. When that time came, what would they do? Xiner, since things have already gotten to this point, there's nothing else I can say. But you've been too accommodating to Bai Chandong. Sometimes he wants something so badly that he doesn't care about the consequences. But you can't do that. You need to think long term. This year is your big day. Originally, I shouldn't have said so much. But I never expected that Bai Chandong would lie to his parents like this. Ningjia, I understand what you're trying to say. Han Xiner smiled. Han Xiner laughed. Since I allowed him to do what he did, of course I was prepared to be exposed. But not everyone could be like you and President Mo, who can plan everything out in the open. I know him. Although his bad habits make him look like a spoiled brat with a bad temper, I know his strengths and weaknesses, and I'm mentally prepared to face them. After hearing this, Tongning nodded her head. I'm just worried that you'll be bullied. As long as he's around, no one can bully me. Don't worry. As for how protective Bai Chandong was of Xiner, Tongning had yet to experience it for herself. Forget it. Everyone had their own way of life and had the right to choose their own lifestyle. Although she was worried, she had no right to criticize someone else's life. As long as you're happy, that's all that matters. But if one day you end up being bullied, make sure you tell me first. I am part of your family. Okay, Ningjia. Han Xiner hugged Tongning. Han Xiner stretched out her arms and hugged Tongning. Although marrying Bai Chandong wasn't as stable as marrying Mo Ting, Han Xiner felt that accompanying the person she loved, no matter what she did, even if it was a risk or a mistake, she was willing to endure it. A fairy tale-like engagement ceremony came to an end after a whole day of hustle and bustle. But that night, there were still fireworks on the island. This was something that Bei Qindong had specially prepared for Han Xiner. All the guests stayed on the island to enjoy the beautiful night view, including Tongning and Mo Ting. Thanks to Bei Qindong, I still have fireworks to watch, Tongning said as she leaned into Mo Ting. Tongning leaned into Mo Ting's embrace with a smile on her face. In reality, being married to Mo Ting was a blessing, but he wasn't good at creating a romantic relationship. Do you think I'm unromantic? Mo Ting asked. Tongning shook her head. Luckily, you don't play with these fancy things. Things like this are only suitable for a weirdo like Bei Qindong. He has the leisure to do so. Mo Ting smiled. Suddenly, he despised the daughter in his arms. How good would it be if we didn't bring yin air out? At this time, with the night view in the sky, they could do whatever they wanted. Don't think about it, Daddy Ting. Your daughter needs milk. Everyone was immersed in the beautiful scenery. But that night, while Mother Bei was helping the couple tidy up their new home, she discovered all sorts of information regarding depression under Bei Qindong's pillow. After looking through the information, Mother Bei was heartbroken. She felt like she didn't take good care of her son and caused him to suffer from this illness. But after looking through the information in detail, she realized that all forms of depression required medication. But when she looked at Bei Qindong's home, there was no sign of a single pill. She flipped through other places, but there was no sign of a hospital diagnosis. Perhaps he had simply received psychological counseling. With this thought in mind, Mother Bei put away the information and left the couple's new home. However, the question that remained in her heart today would one day be solved in a surprising way. After Bei Qindong and Han Xiner got engaged, the industry lost yet another handsome man. Of course, the heiresses knew that Bei Qindong wasn't easy to deal with, so they didn't place much hope on him. They were simply surprised at what kind of woman managed to win over a weirdo like Bei Qindong. Because of a prenatal checkup, Long Jie regretted not being able to attend Han Xiner's engagement party with Tongning. But after finding out that Bei Qindong had faked his illness to gain his parents' approval, Long Jie had a different opinion of Tongning. I know you like to be honest and have zero tolerance for lies. But when it comes to interacting with your family, do you really tell them everything? Sometimes, a well-intentioned lie can lead to a good result. This is a part of getting along with others. On the day of the engagement party, there were a lot of gossipy women that criticized Xiner. I really don't want the Bei family to bully Xiner when the truth is revealed. Even if someone has to take the blame, I want Bei Qindong to take it. Tongning's intuition was accurate, and the Bei family weren't stupid. That's true. I simply hope that when the time comes, Bei Qindong will protect Xiner well. As for you, you should stop worrying about others. The Fei Tian Awards are almost here. You should focus more on your own film. Also, about the child that boss picked up a few days ago, I heard that the Zhai family are currently looking for it. Long Jie took the opportunity to mention Liang Yongyu. Since they're looking for it, why can't they let their daughter off the hook? After hearing this, Tongning shook her head. You don't understand. Whether it's a son or a daughter, they all have the right to inherit the family. What if this daughter suddenly pops up in the future and fights with her brother for the inheritance? Haze, the waters of the rich and powerful are too deep. It makes me tremble in fear. Keep an eye on this matter and don't let the Zhai family find out about it. The Zhai family don't take Liang Yongyu seriously at all. At Xiner's engagement party, I saw the second master of the Zhai family with another female companion. That's why I don't understand. Liang Yongyu is young and beautiful. Why does she have to be a golden canary in a wealthy family? As for the second master of the Zhai family, apart from being rich, what's so good about him? There are so many women chasing after him like a flock of ducks. After hearing this, Tongning replied, you shouldn't worry about other people's business. The Fei Tian Awards is just around the corner. You should focus more on our film. As for Xiner, I hope she and Bei Qindong can keep the secret for a little longer. Chapter 1102. In reality, not long after the incident, the Zhai family came to Hai Rui to pay Mo Ting a visit. Second Master Zhai personally drove his Maybach to Hai Rui. Although he did not explicitly say it was for the sake of his child, his conversation with Mo Ting was full of fireworks. I heard that a few days ago, President Mo picked up something from his Zhai family in the parking lot of the cinema. I hope you can return it as soon as possible. This is not a joke. Mo Ting laughed as he sat in his seat of honor. His entire body emitted a threatening aura. Master Zhai, aren't you joking? Of course, I did indeed pick up something and returned it to its owner. Why are you still here asking for it? Second Master Zhai furrowed his brows as he adjusted his glasses and looked at Mo Ting. Is President Mo telling the truth? Of course. If you don't believe me, you can ask your lover. She knelt down and begged me, yet I didn't agree. You should go ask her yourself. President Mo, we have always minded our own business. I hope you don't get involved in the Zhai family's internal affairs. This was Second Master Zhai's advice to Mo Ting before he left. But of course, Mo Ting wasn't afraid of threats. I can't be bothered with the Zhai family's internal affairs. I just hope you don't kneel in front of me again. Second Master Zhai turned and left. He did not gain any advantage. In front of Mo Ting, even though he was the son of the richest man in China, he did not have the ability to be arrogant. But he had appeared in the lobby of Hai Rui in such a high-profile manner with a Maybach and a limited edition car. Who was he trying to intimidate? Afterwards, Tongning heard about the incident and found out that the Zhai family had visited Hai Rui. So, she was quite worried. Will the Zhai family come looking for trouble? My territory is not a place for outsiders to behave atrociously, Mo Ting replied calmly. No wonder Liang Yongyu went around asking for help. She even abandoned her daughter so that she wouldn't return home to suffer. From the looks of it, the Zhai family are indeed having a hard time. That has nothing to do with us, Mo Ting comforted. You need to forget about it. Tongning nodded her head. In reality, when it came to wealth, the Tang family and the Mo family were not inferior to the Zhai family. The Zhai family were simply more extravagant with diamonds. Marrying into a wealthy family was every woman's dream. So it was no wonder that Liang Yongyu was willing to destroy her body to solidify her status. After returning to the Golden Lounge, Second Master Zhai went straight to Liang Yongyu's room and grabbed her by the neck. Where did our daughter go? Didn't you say the Mo family took you in? But I've already found out that the Mo couple rejected your request. How much longer are you going to lie to me for? Plus, Mo Ting already has 3 children. There's no need for him to keep my daughter. Lintian Mo Lin I Lintian Mo Lintian Mo Hai family A. You need to understand your position. You're just a small-time model. If you want to marry into the Zhai family, you either need to match up with them or give birth to a son. You need to understand your position. You're merely a model. If you want to enter the Zhai family, you either need to match them or give birth to a son. Lin Tian, listen to me. I will work hard and give birth to a son for you. Before that, you'd better behave yourself, Second Master Zhai said before he turned around and left, leaving Liang Yongyu sobbing on the ground. But before that happens, you better behave. After speaking, Second Master Zhai turned and left, leaving Liang Yongyu crying on the floor. If she gave birth to a daughter, then she could forget about entering the Zhai family. It was time to think of a solution. She didn't want to get involved with the richest and wealthiest families. Those that had tens of millions of dollars with a wave of their hands were enough to make her feel like she was living in a drunken dream. Soon, the nominees for the Fei Tian Awards were announced. Whether it was Mo Ting for Best Actor or Xiao San for Best Director, both of them were nominated. She thought, this is already the best consolation for Qiao Senator as expected. The Fei Tian Awards ceremony was held in February. By this time, the box office for The Ant Queen had already reached $2 billion. For a sci-fi film to achieve $2 billion in the box office was unbelievable. No one in the industry would have thought that it was possible, but Tongning had done it. Plenty of investors were already itching to invest in The Ant Queen 2. But Tongning had no intention of doing so. As for the actors and actresses that wanted to appear in The Ant Queen 2, there was an even bigger crowd. Those that once laughed at Tongning, looked down on her, and didn't believe that she could achieve such results, could only hide in a corner. What else did Beijing's entertainment industry have left for Tongning? They could only accept her. At this time, a famous magazine contacted Mo Ting and offered to publish a book on Tongning. They wanted to write about her legendary experiences. But Tongning firmly rejected them. She replied to the editor, "From what I see, everything I do is to prove that I can do it. It doesn't matter if I become a legend or not. It's pointless for others to learn from me. Besides, I'm only 30 years old. I don't want to define myself like this." So, in the eyes of the media, Tongning was a strange person. She was easy to get along with, but she didn't publish a book or publish a biography. She also refused to accept interviews or participate in any talk shows. It was impossible to dig up any information about her. Of course, compared to before the Ant Queen was released, Tongning's status was a far cry from what it was now. She was now recognized as a national treasure in the industry and was respected by everyone in the industry. Had she already done it? Was she on par with Mo Ting? Sometimes, Tongning couldn't help but ask herself. But she still felt like she was missing something just before the Fei Tian Award ceremony. Lin Xian gave birth. Her child was not yet full term, but it didn't affect her health. Because Motherly took good care of her, even after giving birth, Lin Xian gained a lot of weight. Tongning and Long Jie visited her at the hospital. When they saw that she had given birth, they were happy for her. "Congratulations, you've joined the ranks of moms. You're about to have your second child. How can I compare to you?" Lin Xian laughed as she looked at Long Jie's stomach. "Where's Li Jin? I'm at the base. I couldn't make it back." Although her father and child weren't by her side, Tongning could tell that she had no complaints towards Li Jin. "Although he hasn't given me much warmth, he has given me enough pride. I'm sure our children will look up to him as a role model to be strong and courageous. Then are you still coming back to the industry?" Chapter 1103. But hasn't Hai Rui already taken back Superstar Media? Lin Xian asked. "You've already sold your shares to me. Ever since the Ant Queen exploded in the box office, Hai Rui's board of directors have turned a blind eye to everything I do. I'm sure they won't object if I bring it up," Tongning replied. "That's why I've decided to let you guys manage it. After all, there are too many talented people in the entertainment industry that are being overlooked. I still hope to train a few more Luo Shungs and Xinglans." "Don't you need an assistant? Don't I already have a manager?" Tongning smiled. "Plus, now that I've retired behind the scenes, I don't need an assistant to take care of me at all times. Ting and Lu Che are enough." Lin Xian was eager to work. She had never been a canary. Even though her husband's family had a powerful background and she had just given birth. Let's go back then. At some point, Motherly had walked up behind the two of them, who knew how long she had been eavesdropping on their conversation. "While I can still move, I can take care of my grandson. That's exactly what I want." "But, Mom, Qin Xian, we are already satisfied that you're willing to marry Li Jin and give birth to a child for the Li family. I'm still going to say the same thing. You're still young. You can't give up on your own life just because you gave birth to a child. You should go work," Motherly said in a reasonable manner. "Look at Tongning. She's the best example. She's the mother of 3 children, and she's also doing a good job at home. I'm not against you working. So what if you're in the entertainment industry? You're relying on your own 2 hands. What's the point of being prejudiced?" Lin Xian felt that the most rewarding thing in her life was meeting the Li family. She had such a good husband and a mother-in-law that treated her with sincerity. "Mom, thank you. I should be the one thanking you. At a time like this, Li Jin wasn't by your side. As your mother, I know how you feel, but you didn't complain. You're a good child that deserves my love." Tongning looked at the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law and smiled as a warm feeling flowed through her chest. Meanwhile, Long Jie was extremely envious. After all, she had experienced Mother Lu's oppression before, so she knew how difficult it was for a mother-in-law and daughter-in-law to not get along. "Hurry up and take care of your body, then go out to work happily." Of course, this was also the first time Long Jie found out that Tongning had plans to hand Superstar Media over to them. But After the incident with Han Xiucha, it was still a sore spot for her to manage a newcomer. In another 2 days, it was time for the annual Fei Tian award ceremony. Another gathering of superstars. All the celebrities were preparing their battle suits in order to stand out at the award ceremony. But, just like at the film festival, Tongning had no interest in the best dress category. Of course, as one of the hottest superstars, no matter what she wore, she was bound to be surrounded by a large group of reporters. But she still felt that she had passed the age of competing with other female celebrities for the limelight. After learning her lesson at the film festival, Long Jie no longer bothered to prepare a dress for her. After all, she didn't need it to attract attention. But little did she know, Mo Ting was carefully preparing a present for her. However, she never expected, before she received a surprise, she would first have to endure a scare. The night before the awards ceremony, Han Xiner suddenly gave Tongning a phone call. Ning Jie, what is it? Has Bai Qindong been exposed for pretending to be sick? Tongning subconsciously assumed that this was the reason. But Han Xiner shook her head. I'm pregnant, Han Xiner said in a low voice. That's a good thing. Why do you sound like that? Why are you so upset? But my mother-in-law insisted that I get an abortion. She said that Donggu is suffering from depression and has been taking medication for a long time. It will have a huge impact on the child, so I can't keep it. This was a trap that Bai Qindong had dug for himself. So, what's Bai Qindong's attitude towards this? Of course he wants me to keep it. Although my mother-in-law hasn't said anything yet, I'm sure she thinks I'm immature, Han Xiner replied in a slightly wrong manner. Actually, I can tolerate all of this. I simply want to find someone to talk to. Xiner, marriage is a matter between two people. Bai Qindong isn't young anymore. This is a responsibility that he needs to take on. You shouldn't be the only one suffering, Tongning said firmly. Resolve it as soon as possible. Otherwise, if things get out of hand, it will be harder to deal with. I understand, you don't understand. Tongning didn't say this out loud. But, no matter how worried she was, she couldn't criticize someone else's life. All she could do was comfort Han Xiner. Apart from this, what else could she do? After returning home, Mo Ting found Tongning sitting on the sofa in a daze. He couldn't help but ask what happened. Tongning told him about Han Xiner's pregnancy and how much she despised Bai Qindong. After hearing this, Mo Ting laughed. Did you think that Bai Qindong wouldn't be able to protect Xiner? At least, based on the things he's done so far, I don't have any trust in him. Tongning shrugged. Don't worry, okay? I don't care, Tongning said as she stood up helplessly and headed for the bathroom to run a bath for Mo Ting. At this time, Mo Ting pulled out his phone from his pocket and gave Bai Qindong a phone call. Can you sort out your family matters properly? Do you need me to teach you? No. Why are you calling me in the middle of the night to educate me? The fact that you fake your illness made it impossible for Han Xiner to get pregnant. She even called my wife to complain. What right do you have to make my wife worry about your family matters? Mo Ting asked straightforwardly. Do you want me to step in and deal with Annie? Bai Qindong exploded in anger. It was bad enough that his wife didn't tell him about it, but she even went to look for Tongning. Now, Mo Ting was scolding him to his face for causing Tongning to get tired. Yet, he couldn't refute Mo Ting at all. He couldn't stand on his own 2 feet. With this thought, Bai Qindong put down his phone and returned to his bedroom. As soon as he saw Han Xiner lying in bed, his heart ached. He kept saying that he was fine, but in reality, he minded it more than anyone else. Yet, he had no idea that he had put Han Xiner in such a difficult position. Indeed, it was time to find time to sort things out. So, Bai Qindong took advantage of the night to give his father a phone call. Dad, do you have time tomorrow morning? Let's have some tea together. Kid, did you do something shameful? You'll know when you see me tomorrow morning, Bai Qindong said before he hung up the phone. What was more important than reassuring Xiner? Chapter 1104. The next morning, Bai Qindong arrived especially early for tea. Father Bai was waiting for him in the garden. As he brewed some tea, he smiled. It's rare for you to remember that you have a father. Bai Qindong lifted his jacket and sat down on a stone bench. He ignored the falling snow and picked up a hot cup of tea. Father, I came here today to admit my wrongdoings. Does this look like you're admitting your wrongdoings? Father Bei glared at his son and took a sip of his tea. Speak, what do you want? Actually, I'm not sick, Bei Chendong said straightforwardly. After hearing this, Father Bei slammed his teacup onto the stone table and furrowed his brows. If you have the guts, say that again. I said I'm not sick, Bei Chendong repeated. To prevent you from objecting to my marriage with Sheener, I put on an act. Since you've already lied to me, why didn't you go all the way and admit to it instead? Sheener is pregnant, so I told her to abort the child. She thought the antidepressants I took were bad for the child. But, in reality, there's nothing wrong with Sheener and the child, Bei Chendong explained in seriousness. So, I don't think you should force Sheener to abort the child. Father Bei scoffed. In reality, his hands were already trembling. But, when he thought about it, he found it both ridiculous and infuriating. He knew that Bei Chendong was capable of doing something like this. If Sheener wasn't pregnant, did you not plan to explain yourself? Father Bei lowered his head and approached Bei Chendong. Yes, Bei Chendong replied honestly. What do you think your mother and I are? Huh? Father Bei continued to question Bei Chendong. We wholeheartedly worried about your health. But look at what happened. Are you kidding us? Is it fun? Bei Chendong, you're already in your 30s. Why can't you be mature and think about the consequences of your actions like emoting? Did you think that if you made your own decisions in life, we wouldn't have to interfere? Father Bei trembled in anger as Bei Chendong subconsciously reached out to help him up. Don't touch me. I can't make the decision for you. Go tell your mother yourself. So, by the time Han Sheener woke up, Bei Chendong was nowhere to be seen. He didn't even pick up her phone. She had no idea where he had gone, and he didn't even bother to say hello. She would never have guessed that Bei Chendong was currently kneeling in the Bei family's ancestral hall. All the elders of the Bei family had arrived, especially Mother Bei. No wonder she hadn't seen Bei Chendong take his medicine. It was because he wasn't sick at all. It was all because of his superb acting skills. Your dad and I aren't like you. I don't know who you take after. Mother Bei also looked at Bei Chendong with disappointment. Does the Bei family still need you to inherit the family business? I'd rather donate it to charity than let you squander it. Mom, I'm sorry, but this is all my idea. It has nothing to do with Sheener. Humph. Mother Bei snorted coldly. She was very confident about this. Do you think I don't know you? I'm well aware of Xin's personality. She doesn't have such a cunning mind. So don't blame her. If you knew this day would come, why did you lie to us? How old do you think you are? Bei Chendong, I'm not disappointed because of anything else, but because of your actions. You can continue kneeling in the ancestral hall. Han Sheener couldn't find Bei Chendong anywhere. She even gave Tongning and Mo Ting a phone call, but there was no news of him. In the end, she had no choice but to go to the Bei family home to look for him. After giving Mother Bei a phone call, Mother Bei's voice was cold. Bei Chendong has returned home. Oh, Sheener, come home for a while. Mother Bei instructed after realizing that Han Sheener had no idea how serious the situation was. Okay, I'll be right there. Han Sheener had a feeling that being called back to the Bei family home wasn't a simple matter. Bei Chendong had disappeared early in the morning and was still uncontactable. So, what else could he be doing at the Bei family home? So, Han Sheener hurried back to the Bei family home. As soon as she stepped through the front door, she saw Mother Bei looking at her sternly. Sheener, how dare you? Did you already know that Bei Chendong was pretending to be sick? You must have put in a lot of effort to get into the Bei family home. After hearing Mother Bei's words, Han Sheener's heart sank. So, she approached Mother Bei and tried to convince her with sincerity. But Mother Bei directly brushed her aside. Mom, I indeed knew about this from the start. I have nothing to say to defend myself. I simply hope that you won't be so angry. How can I not be angry? Right now, you only have two choices. 1. Give birth to the child and get a divorce from Bei Chendong. 2. Abort the child and get a divorce right now. Mom, I didn't do this because I wanted to marry into a wealthy family. I hope you can understand that Bei Qindong has always been like this, and I can't do anything about him. So, no matter what happens, I can take responsibility with Bei Qindong. But I hope you won't separate us. I can write a guarantee that I won't take a single cent from the Bei family. But I'm begging you, please don't separate us. I don't want to be separated from him. Han Xiner burst into tears as she grabbed onto Mother Bei's arm and shook it back and forth. Mother Bei turned around and looked at Han Xiner. In the end, she shook her head helplessly. Don't cry, don't cry. Go check on that bastard first. Mother Bei did not say anything as she directly led Han Xiner to the Bei family's ancestral hall. As soon as she saw Bei Qindong kneeling on the ground, Han Xiner wanted to run over, but Mother Bei stopped her. You are currently pregnant, and he has a thick skin. It's not like he'll die from kneeling a few times. Han Xiner did not dare to move. She simply stood to the side and watched Bei Qindong. Xiner, go home, Bei Qindong said as he turned to Han Xiner. You have no business here. I'm not leaving. Han Xiner cried. If there's a crime, we can suffer together. Let's see if you still think of using tricks like this in the future. After hearing Han Xiner's words, the Bei couple almost clapped their hands in joy. Finally, someone could teach this demon a lesson. Ever since he was young, no one had been able to control Bei Qindong. Now that Han Xiner was threatening him, it was time to show everyone that Bei Qindong had a day like this. You don't care about the consequences of everything you do. If your actions end up hurting me, I want to see what you'll do. After hearing what Han Xiner had to say, Bei Qindong stood up and bowed to his parents. Dad, Mom, I know I went overboard this time, but if you want to punish someone, you should direct it at me. Xiner was simply forced by me. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.